All right, so we got Rob is next. You're not in your car now, Rob, no? You managed to get home.
Hey man,
Hey, how's it going?
yeah, I sent you, I left you a private saying I'll get online, like on my computer.
Yeah, you said in a couple of minutes. You disappeared for a while. You were
Oh,
literally, I think when
all
you
right.
when you dropped out, you were like second, and then you just
Okay,
went.
okay.
Yeah,
I don't know, I don't know. So
yeah,
I went and made coffee and blah blah blah, and yeah.
that's all right.
Um,
Do
okay.
you understand our position?
Yeah, I want to put myself in your shoes
Mm,
and come at this in a friendly manner. To seriously understand what he's saying. I think Rumsey was saying something interesting about the Torah. You have like blips in history, like epochs, so to speak. So it's given to Moses, then gets corrupted, then given to the next prophet, then gets corrupted, and on it goes.
yes.
Why not succeed that pattern with with Muhammad if he's the final, or is it required because is it not
Oh,
required because the Quran happens to be the
so there
conclusion?
was corruption. There was corruption. No one is saying that there wasn't corruption. This is why when we talk about the corruption of the Torah and Injil in Medina, we're talking about the Jews and Christians reinterpreting it, and this is what the Quran actually documents, that the Jews and the Christians have disagreements due to their interpretations, and this is why Allah says that He will judge between them about what they used to defer. Okay, so this shows to their disagreements with regards to their understanding of the scriptures. Okay, so the text itself was not corrupted. Okay, it was there. Okay, and it was important to be there, right? In order for the people to recognize the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu, which is why the Jews actually settled in Medina in the first place. They were there for centuries in Medina. Okay, before the coming of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And the Quran actually documents how the Jews, they knew the Prophet. They knew who he was going to be. They knew he was going to come. He was going to be in Medina. He was, and they used to say to the disbelievers of Mecca, they used to be like, when the Prophet comes, we're gonna kill you. We're gonna destroy you, right? But then, and then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala comes and says, but then when he came, that who they knew, they rejected him, right? So when they realized he was an Arab prophet rather than a Jewish prophet, they rejected him, right?
So just
For the
quickly,
most part. Yeah.
this is not related to the topic, but this is a more of a theological reaction. Then I'll let you
Mm,
finish. It
mm.
seems like what you're saying there is like there's this apocalyptic uh, thinking going on by these Jews. Like they're still thinking in apocalyptic, eschatological end
No,
times, last
no,
day. There's meant to be
they're
this
not.
prophet that's meant to come. No?
No, no, no. Because they
Okay.
still were, the thing is, they just knew that there was a prophet coming. Okay, and they
Okay.
knew from what they had that he would be in Medina. Okay, and they were simply waiting for him. And every time there was hostility between them and the pagans, they would invoke the coming of the messenger as their weapon against the disbelievers. Okay, so when the Prophet ﷺ came, they knew who he was, and the Quran documents this, and it says they know him like they know their own sons. Okay, but they rejected him for the most part. Some of them accepted him, like Abdullah bin Salam, and they had their evidences for this. They had his description, right? Abdullah bin Salam is not the only one, not the only one amongst the Jews. There was a boy as well who recognized the description of the Prophet, peace be upon him, but his father um, was, he tried to conceal that. And that is what the Quran is referring to as corruption, by concealing information, by changing interpretations and stuff. So this is what is known as tahrif within the context of the Quran.
So,
Then
but
the
what's their motivation for doing this?
rejection, just it depends, right? The main rejection was because he was an Arab. Jews were racist throughout time. There's nothing new about that, right? They didn't like the Arabs,
So
right?
just
So when
quickly,
they saw an
they were
Arab prophet,
expecting
they rejected him.
they were expecting someone. I mean, surely a Medinan prophet that they were expecting. Surely that would have given them
He was Jewish
like
Arab,
oh okay.
ethnically.
So they're
Yeah,
expecting a Jewish
Yeah.
end times prophet. Okay, okay.
No,
So
not
they
end
were
Yeah,
time.
already.
They weren't
so
expecting an
it
end
was
time prophet, just a prophet to come in Medina. There's nothing that indicates it was necessarily an apocalyptic, you know.
or an Arab, so it's just the
Yeah.
Yeah, but
location.
it sounds very final though. Based on what you're telling me, it sounds like they're assuming a sort of like a, for example, in the Bar Kokhba revolt in the early second century, it's like, you know, how he took himself to be the
Yeah.
Messiah, you know.
Yeah.
So uh it's so do we have then, do we have their writing per se, or their tafsir that per se, that documents them having this hope or this expectation of a Medinan prophet, a Jewish Medinan prophet, that then
No,
turns out to be Arab instead?
oh no, this is first and foremost, this is understood within our sources. I can't remember the source off the top of my head that mentions this specific detail. But like I said, the Quran is our primary evidence here. Okay, so when it details this information, at the end of the day, when we look into the Ahadith, we don't see them disagreeing with this. They're like, yeah, we were expecting a prophet. Yeah, you came. We rejected you. Yes, some of us accepted you. This is known, right, within our Hadith corpus. Okay, that documents this interaction in Medina. And this is
Okay.
why they kept testing him as well. The Jews kept testing him as well to make sure, yeah, he's the prophet that we were waiting for. And yet, still, most of them just rejected him and chose to. And this is why Allah Subhanahu wa Taala reminds them of his favor upon them, and the fact that He gave them the scripture, the fact that He gave them laws, the fact that He gave them guidance, and all of that, constantly reminding them
Mm.
um,
So
because of
that's
their.
interesting. So therefore his vindication is is the Quran being the miracle,
One of them,
or
yes.
one of, yeah,
Yeah, one
but
of.
most likely the main one. Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, the Quran is the main
Yeah.
thing, 100%. Yeah.
All
So
right.
this is the thing. When it talks about the Torah and the Injil in Medina, this is referring to what Allah has revealed. So Allah
Right.
has revealed that information because this is from the Torah and the Injil that was given to Moses and Jesus. And it remained with these people, okay, for centuries prior to Islam. Okay. But no one really documented it until we came along, right? So we don't have any external documentation. But from our sources, considering this is an internal critique, we know that they've had this for a very long time. And it's mentioned by the Prophet, peace be upon him, as well, as he mentioned that the kings came after Jesus and they did tabdeel of the scriptures. They brought forth new books and considered that to be the scriptures that the Jews and the Christians would hold to. And there was a remnants of the followers of Jesus that held on to his message, like Salman al-Farsi. Because Salman al-Farsi tells us his story. He tells us how he went from monk to monk. He was a student, and every time his monk would his teacher would pass away, he would direct him to another monk, and he would go there and he would travel the lands to ensure that he remained upon the message of Christ. Okay, until his last teacher, he spoke to his last teacher and he said, "Listen, there's no one left on this on the true message of Jesus. So go to Medina, you will find the prophet." And interestingly enough, Salman al-Farsi recognized the prophet utilizing the scripture, which mentioned his seal of prophethood. That's how he recognized him. One of three things that he recognized him by, which is very interesting because Buhaira the monk noticed the prophet, peace be upon him, for exactly that thing, the seal of prophethood between his shoulder blades. So we can see that this is a minority of people that understood the signs from the scriptures that pointed them to Medina and got them to Medina, awaiting the prophet. And then when he emerged, they accepted him. And like I said, many also
Yeah.
rejected it.
So that's so thank yeah, no, that's very helpful because I'll try and spend like 2-3 minutes giving you like a parallel version of what, say, the Christians are doing with respect to the Old Testament. Let's just say that these Christians are unaware of any other texts. That you are saying the
Yes.
Torah is not the Pentateuch, the Injil is not the, say, the four Gospels. Okay, I get that. I understand where you guys are coming from.
Mm.
But then there are Christians like, say, Paul and the apostles, that the only thing that they're aware of is what you and I would see as the Pentateuch, right? And then the the
But
threefold division of Tanakh, like Torah,
yeah,
prophets, wisdom, texts. Now, when they then apply it to Jesus as per what we see in the New Testament, so like say John's Gospel with Jesus feeding 5,000,
yeah,
and it literally says in John 6, when they saw the sign, you can see this as ayah, right? When they saw the
mm,
sign of what he did, they're quoting Deuteronomy 18. This is the prophet with a
sure,
capital P. In
sure.
other words, he seems to be mimicking a Moses-like situation, just as Moses fed in the wilderness, Jesus feeding the wilderness. But notice, so the reason why I'm bringing this up is it's an example where, at least in my scripture, we have a direct like cross-reference to our Pentateuch. So in your situation, is there a cross-reference to the Quran's to the Torah that you believe is the original Torah? Like, is that like when these people are looking at Muhammad going, "That's the prophet"? Do they have like a chapter and verse quotation?
No, of
Um,
course, because
okay,
like we mentioned, first and foremost, what is required for us regarding the Torah and the Injil is already in the Quran. We don't require a cross reference in the first place, because that the scriptures have been absorbed into the Quran. Okay, this is one of the purposes of the Quran, which is why when it mentions that it's a guardian and an authority over the previous scripture, it guards it by incorporating what we need of it. So we don't need anything external to it. Okay. And secondly, it's an authority over it because the Quran in of itself it's the ultimate authority. And like I mentioned before, I don't know if you came back in, but what I was mentioning to earlier was that when the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith about Omar reading the Torah, and the Prophet ﷺ got very angry, got visibly angry. Abu Bakr had to make Omar away. He was like, Omar, can you not see the face of the Prophet? And the Prophet ﷺ said, why are you reading the Torah when Allah has given you the book in its pure form? If Moses was here, he'd have no choice but to follow me. So he was highlighting that the Quran is the authority even over the Torah, even over Moses himself. That is the authority. So this is how we understand the Quran. This is the explanation of this
right,
verse.
right.
So we don't need to cross-reference anything. We don't need to say, oh, this Torah and Injil and everything that was in Medina, we need to look at that to understand what the Quran is saying. No, because it's already in the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have with these cross references is because they are two scriptures that have been written by men claiming to it to be from God and then attributing things to the prophets and their companions. That's why you guys are cross-referencing these things, because you've agreed that what you guys have made up, you're going to take that as scripture, and you've abandoned your covenant, as it's mentioned in chapter 5, verse 13 and 14, that you've abandoned the covenant and you forgot about what was revealed, and you have corrupted the scriptures. Okay, so you've changed all of this. You've changed it, and so what you are reading and what you Christians have today has nothing to do with the religion of God. It's what you guys have came up with, and you've incorporated truth into that. But the Torah and the Injil that the Quran is affirming is not that.
Okay, so and I'm saying this, I'm trying to build a bridge here so you can see. I'm understanding your point. I would like
Accept
you to
Islam.
also.
That's how we build bridges. You accept Islam.
I would like you to also step into my shoes and see. So my reaction when you say it, when there's like an assertion, you corrupted, you did this. There is nothing in um, academic literature, for example, of the Bible that where there's this conspiracy, that there's this underhanded sort of like hiding, corrupting. The
Of
fact, like
course,
the Dead Sea Scrolls was a major
discovery.
confirmation of this. That you have, say, the Leningrad Codex in the 900s AD period.
Yeah.
Uh, Obviously, a long line of Masoretic tradition going back to, say, second century thereabouts. Then the Septuagint, the Peshitta, And then Dead Sea Scrolls goes back, say, 200-300 BC, thereabouts, from in that range. So then you have an offshoot group, the Qumran, the Essene group, their type of Pharisee group. They're also quoting and referring to the Torah, the Pentateuch. And on top of that, apocalyptic texts like First Enoch that give a window into the exilic period. So what the Jews were doing in Babylon, say in the 500s, 600s BC period, and on it goes back. So we have this 1,500 year range, so to speak, of textual information to mine the data out. Okay. Then we have, for Christians, we have the New Testament text that also then cross-references the Old Testament. Then we have the patristics that are also cross-referencing both the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Yeah, because that's what they had. Okay.
So remember in our very brief encounter on Hamza's stream, this is why when I came up with that hypothetical about, so I'm sticking with the Quran as being basically the guide here, okay? Because don't forget, and I understand in your theology, the Quran is not original to Muhammad. It is literally Allah. It's a recitation.
Revelation,
right?
Revelation, yeah.
Right. So, and therefore that has to be a miracle, because how could Muhammad know about all these ancient details? Because even in Surah 3, he says this is from the unseen. You weren't there when they were casting pens or lots with respect to Mary in the temple and blah blah blah. Okay. Now, with a little knowledge of, comparative literature and Second Temple discourse. So, for example, when I then compare the Quran's, like if I do like a form of like note-taking and parallelism with Adam's resume as per Genesis versus Adam's resume as per Quran, all the way down to Jesus, they don't match. There is...
Agreed.
Exactly the examples I laid out on Hamza's stream. Then, if I were to discover, say, the proto-evangelion of James that speaks about Mary in the temple being fed by angels and casting of pens and lots, and then Joseph takes her, and then I see that, oh wow, that matches exactly with Surah 3. Then the encounter with most likely Gabriel in Surah 19, where she goes to the east side of the temple, she has this encounter, and he's like, no, you're going to get pregnant, you're going to give birth to Jesus. And then the date palm later on, that happens to match this pseudo Gospel of Matthew,
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is, I then can't help but notice that if I were to chronologically align a Genesis to, like a Genesis onwards text, but no, it's not the Bible, it's the Quran, Adam all the way down, there's direct correspondence to these legends. You see, I'm talking pre-Islam. I'm talking as like say if I'm only aware of history in the first 5 centuries, obviously I'm not aware of a Muhammad and Quran because that's a century later. Because that would be anachronistic if I'm thinking of
you'd
Muhammad and Quran. So then in those first 5 centuries, if I was to make up a fanfic of Genesis onwards, and if I was to pool together all these sources, it's very suspicious that it happens to be exactly what the Quran does. That's what I'm getting at. And so when you're talking about Jews converting, either it's a conspiracy theory, or the only Torah that they're aware of happens to be, say, Talmudic, Rabbinic, Haggadic, and Halakhic Jewish midrash stuff, not the actual written text that everyone was using, the Pentateuch and so on. And then I suppose, and this is my final point, I'll let you speak. I was in a conversation with another Muslim about 2 weeks ago, where they're contradicting, it seems, what you and say Ramzi are saying. Because I asked them, okay, if we were to make up an Injil, like a critical edition, like remake an Injil based through the lens of the Quran, how would you go about that? And they gave an interesting answer. Well, we'll start with Q, and then whatever remnants of, say, the four Gospels and whatever other apocryphal stuff, and that'll become our Injil. But then I'm just like, but then now you're relying on Q, which and they said about 90% of Q would be in Injil. So, but Q is basically the synoptic tradition.
No, but this is a hypothetical.
Like,
yeah, but that is a
yeah.
hypothetical.
So I don't know why they were saying that to me. Like,
yeah, look,
Yeah,
at
neither
the end
do
of
I.
this hypothetical, it doesn't hold any weight because it's a hypothetical.
sure,
The evidence is that we have the Injil. Like I said, what we need of it in terms of its parables, in terms of its legislation and whatnot, that is relevant to this nation, the nation of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that you would find in the Quran. Okay, and we know where to find it. It's in the section of Al-Mathani. Okay, so this is very clear to us. This is evidence to us. No hypotheticals, no nothing. Okay. Now,
sure.
like I said, when it comes to the scriptures that you hold to be scripture, it is as Ibn Hazm has said. Right. When it comes to the Christians, they've done the work for us. They don't claim that the four Gospels or any of the books of the New Testament was given to Jesus, whereas that's exactly what the Quran says. The Quran says
Sure.
that Allah gave the Injil to Jesus, and He taught him the Torah. So this wasn't a Torah that was available, right, to Jesus during his time. It was something that he was taught to him by Allah, in the same way that He taught all the previous prophets the Torah. So this is our argument to the Jews as well. The Jews say that they've had the Torah, the eighth and ninth principle out of their 13, that they've always had the Torah, it's always been preserved and it's been passed down and everything from Moses. And we're like, well, no, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that He taught Isa the Torah. You didn't have it, right? You didn't have what came to Musa. You
But
had
we don't know
something
the
else.
size of the Torah. Like, we don't know, like, how big the scroll was,
No,
how
no,
many
no, no.
words. Like,
No, we don't know. We don't know those
it's just
details. Okay.
Torah. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Because again, because Allah has already preserved the Torah and the contents that is required for us and the Jews from it in the Quran, we don't need to know that information. We don't need to know what was in the Torah at the time of Musa, what was in the Torah at the time of Isa, and we have some of the contents of the Torah documented in the time of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because the Muslims documented it. Okay, so we know that there were prophecies. We know what was said about the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that made the people recognize him from the Torah,
And
as well as other pieces of information like the Ten Commandments. Okay,
if I may,
what the Ten Commandments given to Moses was. Sorry,
sorry, if I may add one thing.
yeah,
I would also like to add that the Quran, hypothetically, even if we did know what was in the Torah, it still would not be for us anyway. Why? Because of what the Quran says about who and what the Torah was for. Because our understanding of the Torah and the Injil of the previous books, we don't believe it to be the same as the Quran. What do I mean by that? Meaning, whereas we hold the Quran to be a revelation to everybody, all of mankind throughout, the Torah, the Zabur, and the Injil, we hold to the position that it was for a particular group of people for a particular point in time. So even if even if the Torah, at that time was available, it still would not hold weight to the Quran, like you said earlier, Yemeni, but also it still would not be for a majority of people, because the teachings that it holds, yes, the general teachings, everything that we need to learn, everything mankind needs to learn from the Torah is in the Quran. And then what things could be left off, well, understand that some of the teachings could have been specific to the people of Israel, the people with whom it was meant for. That's why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the Quran is the authority, we don't necessarily need the Torah, because for mankind, the teachings that mankind, that's important for mankind, not only pertain to a specific group of people. The teachings that mankind needs to gain from that is in the Quran. The same thing with the Zabur. The same thing with all the other previous revelations that God has sent before the Quran. So this is why we also hold to the position that the Quran takes full authority, because not only is it the last, but also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that he will preserve it. He will be its guardian. He will protect it. That's something he did not say for all the previous ones. As a matter of fact, he says he gives it to the people, the learned amongst them. He gave them the responsibility of keeping the message, and
Yeah,
we can see
and he warned them.
we can see how that was
Yeah,
done.
and he warned them, do not exchange my verses for a measly price, which is exactly what they ended up doing.
So just quickly, the Torah, like again, I know this is veering to hypothetical, but the Torah, according to you and according to the Quran, well, you
Oh, according
believe
to the
in what the
Quran.
Quran
It's not,
says.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
according
yeah.
to the Quran. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have then any biographical information, so it would just be like say the Beatitudes, like, or like the Didache, or say even Q, like
It
just
would
the sayings,
so
like.
yeah, it wasn't just that, because for example, we get indications with the hadith of Musa and Adam, where they met each other, and you can see that Moses was aware of Adam. Okay, so we understand from that Musa alayhi salam at least had knowledge of Adam, had knowledge of those who came before him. But whether that was in the Torah in of itself, we do not know. We cannot make an argument of that. But what we do know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Torah, that the Torah was a guidance for the people. It had its judgments in it, its laws. It had prophecies, right, and whatnot. So this is some of the information that we know about the Torah that was given to Moses. If anything, the scholars would think that the Torah was not much bigger than the Quran. It
Interesting,
was
right?
similar. Yeah, it was similar to the Quran, and the evidence for this is actually when the jinn speak of it, right? When they say when the Prophet ﷺ was giving da'wah to the jinn, and they were like, we heard a recitation like that of Moses. So the Quran is comparable to the Torah.
I see.
Yeah.
And I suppose in the same vein of, say, like produce a surah like it, like, in other words,
No,
this
that's a
particular.
different thing.
No.
That's a
Oh,
different thing.
okay.
When we talk
Okay.
about the recitation, it's not so much the Arabic language, because obviously the Torah would have been in Hebrew, right? Because
Yeah.
Moses was an
Yeah.
Israelite. But in terms of the message, like the Torah and its contents was very similar to that of the Quran. So that's why they've compared when they heard it, and the jinn lived centuries, so they were there when Moses was, um, you know,
Sure.
teaching the
Sure.
Torah, and then they heard the Quran, and they were like, "Come, listen to this. This is a scripture
And
like that of Moses."
would you say that the Quran, hence the Quran is not an, if the Torah say the same size as the Quran, obviously, if all of the Torah were in the Quran, then the Quran would be like double its size. So obviously, it's not an exhaustive recounting of what the contents of the Torah, but rather a fine-tuned
Yeah,
paraphrase,
yes.
maybe, of.
What we need, what we need of it, we'll find in the Quran, and specifically and what we refer to as sab'a tawil, tawal, sab'a tawal, the 7 long chapters. Okay.
And also, if I may also add, using that hypothetical, if all of the Torah was in the Quran, it would kind of be unnecessary for all of the
Yeah, it
Torah.
wouldn't
It's
make sense.
unnecessary, and because again, remember what I said. It's for if the teachings are for a specific group of people, whereas the
Yeah.
general teachings, the teachings that all of mankind needs to understand, is in the Quran. It will make no sense for Allah to say this is a guidance for mankind, and then put teachings there that were meant for a specific group of people. It would not make any sense. The
Yeah.
teachings in the Quran that
Oh,
Allah
because
says is
it's
for
relevant for
mankind.
Moses' time, not relevant
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the people
It's
during
Yeah.
Muhammad's
so yeah.
time.
If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the teachings there, the teachings in the Quran are for all of mankind, it will be unnecessary for him to put a teaching that was meant for only a specific group of people.
Yeah.
But
The
then,
thing is, but just quickly, just to go
Mhm.
back on when I was saying
Yeah.
about the size, because you mentioned if you had the whole Torah, you would double size of the Quran. This is an assumption. Ultimately, we don't know
Yeah,
the size. And
assuming that what you said
yeah,
about the same, like say
but
that
there is no
exactly the same,
definitive
then yeah,
information about the
it's
size of the Torah. But what we do know
sure.
about the
Yeah, yeah.
Torah is what it had, and it was comparable to the Quran based on the jinn and what they
Sure,
said.
sure, sure. So then, So this is just a side comment. With Christians, Christians find it valuable that we have, say, the Old Testament as a type of like preface to the New Testament. So in other words, when we talk of Bible, we need the Old Testament to then make sense of the New Testament because we can cross-reference and check. That's why we have it in our text. That's sort of like
Sure,
a reactionary
but
comment.
this is something. Remember, at the end of the day, the New Testament
Mhm.
in of itself was compiled by Jews, right? They were Jewish authors,
Sure.
Jewish
Yeah.
authors, right?
Yeah.
And the Old Testament were Jewish authors, right?
Yeah.
So
We
you
don't
have
have this, like when Rumsey said Moses is receiving 5 books on Sinai. That form of inspiration is nowhere in the Bible. Like
I agree with you.
I
We
hold a
agree with you.
human. So I believe it's a human work first that was providentially guided to become this thing called the Bible. Not that it was
Sure,
like zap knowledge.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. For us, it's direct revelation.
And
God
that's
wrote.
where the rubber hits the road. I think all these debates,
Mm.
that's the bit where we have 2 ships crossing in the middle of the night. That's where we need to, I think we need to see which one is basically most valid, because I believe it's more
No,
logical that it's a human work first and then
yeah,
providentially guided.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's not about what's more logical or anything, because at the end of the day, revelation in of itself
Or what's true
defies
ultimately? Yes.
defies logic,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so this is the thing, and um, and the point here is, at the end of the day, we're talking about our sources. We're not talking about
Sure.
external sources. We're talking
Yeah.
about how do
Mhm.
we, as the Muslims, understand the concept of the Torah and in the Injil within our paradigm, in order for anyone to formulate an argument against it in the first place. So this is why we're saying that you can't do that. There is no such thing as a dilemma, if, because
Yeah,
our concept,
within your
yeah,
wheelhouse, so to speak, you can't.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and unfortunately, many Christians have been duped, right? And there's, there isn't really a polite way to say it. I think that is the most polite way to say it. Many Christians have been duped because they've been told that the Quran affirms the Bible, which is not what we affirm in the first place. So the
But
premise,
just quickly, do you understand why they're saying that though? Because I understand why they're saying that.
it doesn't, for us, we don't care why they say it. It's not important to us why they say it. The important thing is it's a false premise. You could give me any sort of reason. It doesn't actually help them.
Yeah, no, it's not about what's important.
Of course it's about what's important.
It's coming from a concept of being uninformed, but in an innocent way. So, for example,
It-
say a person is totally oblivious, living under a cave, on a rock somewhere, totally oblivious of Islam.
can you tell me,
But this,
can you,
mm,
Rob, sorry, can you sincerely tell me that people who have been studying Islam for 20 years have been living under a rock and are innocently ignorant of our position?
well, actually, I know of a lot of Christians that have not read the Quran, are not aware of. So when
I'm
I
talking
cite
about,
the Quran, they're
yeah,
like,
but
"Well, you
I
don't
don't
know."
ask you. I'm talking about people who have studied Islam, made it their whole thing for 20 years. You're going to tell me that because these are the
Yeah,
people
then it
that are
becomes
pushing this
for them
narrative.
it becomes more nuanced with respect to terms like Torah and Injil. What I'm saying is, if you as a Muslim, if you were to do dawah to a Christian,
Yeah,
and if you were to say, yeah, we have the Torah, we have the Gospel, the Injil, obviously the Quran being the confirmation of all that,
yeah.
immediately psychologically in a Christian's mind, they're immediately thinking of the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Which is why we don't do that.
No,
That's how we
and we
give.
No, but then just quickly, then when Muslim apologists then try and tease out like Isaiah 42 or Song of Songs 5 or Deuteronomy 18 or even the Paraclete in John 40, when they try and look at those texts and tease out or dig out, see, these are references to Muhammad or the Quran. Now you're
also,
using our Bible. Now what?
so
No,
Rob,
okay. So,
I think I think a huge misconception is this, and again, I'm so sorry for interrupting again. Um, the difference, and this is why I don't necessarily agree with you, Rob, is because when you say they're ignorant because they're not being informed, remember, there's a layer of sincerity and insincerity here also in play. Because if
Sure.
someone's claiming if you're claiming ignorance, and I do understand that there are cases where a Christian may not read the Quran, a Christian may not be informed. The issue is there if you didn't read the Quran and you're not informed, why are you making the claim in the first place? Because we have a lot of
Oh,
them.
yeah, then I agree with you.
One
Yeah.
second, one
Don't
second,
make the
one
claim
second.
if you're uninformed. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah, I
you,
agree.
thank you.
Yeah.
And on
Yeah.
top of that, not only if you're making the claim and you're not informed, whenever we try to correct them, we try to actually inform them. A true sense of sincerity is if
Where
you've
you're
been
coming from.
corrected on
Yeah.
something, if you've been corrected on something and now you didn't know, but now you know, now and that you still persist on saying the same thing you were saying beforehand, as if no everything just went in one ear and out the ear. That means it's no longer a matter of, well, it's because I'm uninformed. It's now a matter of me trying to literally be insincere and try to say something that it's not, even though these guys who are trying to tell me what it's actually talking about from their paradigm. Because I'm not claiming it from an external critique, I'm claiming it from internal critique. So it's essentially me saying, me with my lack of knowledge, with my ignorance, I know better than someone who studied Islam for 20 years about their book.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. But the same applies reverse. Just quickly. Just if you want to be honest, and if again, I'm seeing what you're saying, but the same applies to those who specialize, say, in Bible stuff, like me, for example.
Mhm.
Uh, and then, but a little bit more, by the way. I know I'm not the average Christian, but I can't help but then it all boils down to the original question I was asking you, Yemeni,
Mm,
back on Hamza's stream,
mm,
um, which I've asked Muslims. Like, if you remember the Muslim lantern, like a couple of years ago when I was on
mm.
asking him the same question. If you do the parallelism,
Yeah, the
why
parallels.
do I find these stories pre-Quran but post-Bible in that range, but it's only the
Because
Quran sort of like amalgamated, like
yeah,
combined
but
basically. Yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the truth, and we find that truth in the remnants of things that people have written in the past. That's all it is. That's all it comes down to.
So would you say it's like so would you say then that was due to like this revelation? So just like
Yeah.
how the Quran is revealed,
Yeah.
these
No, no. So
random
Allah,
these unknown
no,
individuals had
no,
correct
no, no. Because
revelation.
for something to be revelation, it has to be traced. We have to trace it back to the prophets for it to be revelation. So this is why when we talk about, for example, to tag on to your point about when we speak to Christians and we talk about things that we see in the Bible, we are simply affirming truths. We are not affirming revelation. So when we even see in the Gnostic Gospels or in the Talmud or in any of these sources, we are simply saying that is true. We know that's true because Allah
Okay,
affirms.
because you're making the Quran the standard, the
The
yardstick,
Quran
so
is
to
the
speak,
standard. Yes, the Quran is the
and you're like,
standard.
oh yeah, that's true because
Yeah,
yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But is it revelation? Absolutely not.
No.
It's true, but not revelation. It's only revelation if there is something that it can be traced to, or if Allah and His Messenger affirm it.
And this can
So
actually
how?
apply to any one second, sorry, Rob. This
Mhm.
can actually apply to anything. For example, let's say that in the Hindu scriptures, right? I read a verse in the Vedas where it says there is only one God. Me as a Muslim, I can say this is true, but I'm saying this not because I believe the Vedas are true. I'm saying this because my Quran tells me there's only one God. The
Mm,
idea
Mm.
of that monotheism. So
yeah.
I'm not claiming revelation by saying this is true. I'm just saying the standard, the actual revelation, which I believe that is the standard, and it's telling me that this is true.
Yeah. And this is why the Quran is named Al Furqan, the criterion, because it's the
Sure.
criterion that we use to judge what is true and what is false from other sources.
So that's interesting with the like when you mentioned Hindu, it's if any Christians are listening, it's basically the equivalent of like in Acts 17 when Paul goes to this pagan area. Obviously, you and I would, if you and I were like bystanders watching this encounter, you and I would agree there's nothing true in that area when Paul was walking in Mars Hill. But then he uses what's called a redemptive analogy with this unknown rock, the unknown stone, this unknown God written on it, and he tries to bridge a type of, like, say, like a monotheistic sort of like, hey, there's the one true God, the one creator who did this and that.
Yeah.
And so for Christians, we have the same concept that you have these redemptive analogies. Even
Well,
if even with
for us,
people
it's
that,
very, yeah. For
yeah,
us, it's like when it comes to these similarities and stuff. For us, at the end of the day, we say, as Allah said for us to say, let us have a common term between us and you, that we worship God alone and we don't associate any partners with Him. That's how we approach it. You know, Ali's giving you this analogy, you know, so to understand what we're talking about, how the Quran is a criterion and stuff. But ultimately, you know, for us to bridge the gap, and I was serious before, for us to bridge the gap, it's for you, we extend this bridge to you for you to cross it, you know, and become Muslims.
and so then but by me crossing it, which I hope this discussion is demonstrating just a little bit of that, because crossing it can also be a lifelong thing. Anyway, the point is, I'm genuinely, um, I'm hitting a brick wall on this bridge, where
What you recall?
the brick wall is this. As I read through the Quran, because now the Quran is the Al-Furqan,
The criterion.
it's basically now the criteria. It is it's on the hot seat.
Mm.
And it's Allah. If you think about it, this is Allah's very words in your hands. And this is why I know Muslims, you know, the amount of reverence they show to it, like off the ground, or, you know,
In the
where they
highest of
position it,
places.
and all that. I get that psychologically, because these are the very words of God, the creator God of the whole universe. Okay, I get all that. And then you have, um, you know, statements like this is from the unseen and so on. Okay, great. Now what happens if there's a slip up historically? Like when Allah asserts things about what happened to Abraham, Moses, on all the way through, and if it's not historically true,
Mm.
you see this.
Well,
Very,
Do you
very
see
easy.
the knife's edge there? Like,
Yeah, I do.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is something we come across all the time, because for us to be able to determine something historically, for example, let's take your Abraham example. If it contradicts history or what we have in terms of historical documentation, we first have to test that historical documentation. Is that something to be relied upon? Is that something that we can be sure of is faithful to the life of Abraham or to the individual Abraham? If we can't affirm that in of itself, it can't be used as a standard of truth. So the Quran contradicting it there's no issue with it, right?
and
Because
on top of that, I
historically,
think,
yeah,
yeah,
you talk about it. You're the history.
yeah, I'm
You're
so
the history
sorry.
buff. Yeah,
I'm so sorry. I
you
have to
keep
go
your
in
mouth
about
shut.
2 minutes. I have to go in about 2 minutes. That's why I'm so sorry. But I think, Robert, with full sincerity, I think the moment we establish that the Quran is the criteria, history no longer matters. Because for something to be historical, that means you're holding it subject to the foundations and the structures of the historical method. So for in this moment, when if the Quran says something with it says something happened, right? But are some historical accounts don't agree to that. Now, one asks yourself, the Quran says it's the criteria. It's the criteria of all things, over all sources, over all evidences. It is the criteria because on one hand, history can be proven to be wrong,
wait,
whereas
is
the
this
Quran is
mic
We're
well
losing
breaking
established.
up really
Ali.
bad?
Ali, we're losing you.
Okay, I think
When you said
I'm not good.
you're gonna
I'm
leave in 2 minutes, is it because you're descending into a mine?
No, it's
not, is this better?
No,
yeah,
That's
that
much
the,
better.
sounds
it's
a bit
the
better. Yeah.
it's the father time
All right.
effect. Assalamu alaikum wa
Uh,
rahmatullahi
Wa
Never
alaikum
mind.
salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So real quick, before I lose track again, so when you something to be historic, when you're using grading things under the idea of history, because you're grading under his historical method, that means in that moment, history is the criteria because you're seeing is this historical. Now, the Quran is the Quran is the criteria. So in a sense, because you've established it's the criteria, if history says A but the Quran says B, B is correct. If history says C, but the Quran says D, D is correct, meaning the Quran proceeds and supersedes history. The Quran proceeds and supersedes science. The Quran proceeds and supersedes everything because it is the criteria for all things. So that's why I agree with Yemeni when he says that history is irrelevant, because what is history? History is the work of man. It's man writing records and hearsay, essentially hearsay and conjecture, and it's been proven many times to be wrong. And on top of that, there is no such thing as historical certainty. Why the idea of grading something that's claiming certainty, that's claiming to be never wrong, that's claiming to be from a source that's above man, and you're holding that under the microscope, under the methods of man, that within itself is a problem. That's why no Muslim will claim the Quran to be historical, because claiming something to be historical means you're using it under the historical method, which is by example, by its definition, it means you're putting the Quran under history, and we will never do that. That's why we don't hold to that position.
This is actually a beautiful question.
I think this is my time to say my salams, and I'm so sorry I do have to go.
I appreciate clarification. Yeah.
No worries, Rob. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is actually a good question posed by the Orthodox Mole. What history of Abraham does the Quran contradict in the first place?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi. By the way, Rob, how you doing? We haven't had a chance to chat before, but Brother Yemeni, there's actually
this is the only time I can have a nice chat, because Yemeni is such a great guy. I met him in the UK earlier in June.
Anyway,
you guys are having a great chat, and it was such an interesting point at which you guys were having a conversation, and I just kind of wanted to come in because there's a very short ayah surah of the Quran, which itself addresses the point that you guys are discussing. It's so interesting.
I'll be back just quickly. I've got in a couple minutes.
All right. And the surah is Surah Bayna. The Quran itself tells you the role it plays and how it plays the role of the Furqan. If you pull it up, and if you want, I can read it.
I'll bring it up. Surah, what's the number? Chapter number?
Surah Bayna, I believe it's number 98.
Oh, yeah.
I can read it up for you if you want, or you can go ahead and read it if you want.
Yeah, it is chapter 98.
Yep.
I can read it. I don't mind.
Oh, sure. Go for
it. Okay. Those who disbelieve among the people of the book and the idolaters were not to be set free until the clear sign had come to them, a messenger from Allah reciting purified pages in which there are true books. Those who were given the book did not become divided until after the clear sign had come to them. They were commanded only to serve Allah, devoting their religion to Him, being Hanifs, and to observe the prayer and give the alms. That is the right religion. Surely those who disbelieve among the people of the book and the idolaters will be in the fire of Gehenna, there to remain. They are the worst of creation. Surely those who believe and do righteous deeds, they are the best of creation. Their payment is with their Lord, gardens of Eden through which rivers flow, there to remain forever. God is pleased with them, and they are pleased with him. That is for whoever fears his Lord.
So it essentially addresses your entire question. The Quran itself answers it. And you were talking about certain apocryphal texts as well, that you find this over there and you find this over there and you find this over there, and Brother Yemeni answered it very beautifully, that why do you believe it? Because we have the Quran. The Quran tells us this is what happened. Now if there's another account somewhere that says this happened, we see, does the Quran say this happened? Yes, it happened. Okay, we believe it. And the Quran itself is showing you the methodology here of how it works as the Furqan.
So let's break this surah down. So those who disbelieve among the people of the book and the idolaters were not to be set free until the clear sign had come to them. The clear sign in this sense will be the Quran.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is further evidenced in ayah number 2.
Yes, so a messenger from God reciting purified pages. So the purified is it being purified in the sense a purification process, or is it a way of saying these are
Okay,
pure,
so the concept,
untainted pages? Or
yes, there you go. Untainted,
okay,
as in completely truthful.
sure, okay,
Okay, and this is why, and this is,
and verse 3, in which there are true books.
yes, and this
Okay,
goes back to the point that you guys were discussing earlier. That you were asking, okay, if the Quran contains the entire Torah, then it would have to be twice as big and stuff like that. So the Quran is telling you the essence of that is contained. Kind of like how Yemeni was explaining it earlier as well.
so those who were given the book, now whose was for talking about? Those who were given the book did not become divided until after the clear sign. So clear sign would be the Quran, until after the Quran had come to them.
Yeah. So these are referring to the people of the book, right? So they were given the book. They didn't have disagreements and stuff until the Quran came to them, because this is when they started to disagree and change. They started to reject and everything, because before that, like, they were fine. They had what they subhanAllah. They
Yeah,
had what Allah has revealed.
okay, yeah.
So
You see, again, I'm trying to see this psychologically, but I'm not. Trust me, I don't have an agenda here in this discussion. Just trust me on that. I'm as a Christian, I can psychologize as, like, for example, my Christianity now. If I was there in real time as, say, Surah 98 is being revealed or something, I can see a division happening because I already have a pre-knowledge or a preset function in my head that I believe in, say, the deity of Jesus, his crucifixion, everything that we see in, say, the biblical corpus. Because it's already canonized by like the 3rd, 4th century CE. It's already, the Codex Sinaiticus, we have like a Bible, but it's a collection of books with a pre-knowledge of things. So I can see now a division happening if this thing called the clear sign, which is the Quran, comes and says, "Oh, this is what actually happened to Adam, Abraham, Moses, all the way to Jesus."
this is in reference to the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Okay.
Because prior to that, okay, because remember earlier I said to you that there were disagreements between them regarding their interpretation of the Torah and the Injil, and this is where the corruption was taking place. But they all agreed that there was a prophet to come. This was what they were unified by. But
Even
when
the Christians or just the Jews?
No, the Christians as well. They knew it was because there wasn't just Jews in Medina; it was Christians as well. There were
But you see,
Christians.
again, but if Christians are doing that, but Christians think it's all done and dusted, like done in 1st century with Jesus.
Because you're familiar with that. Okay, we're telling you there is another group, a minority group, that slipped through, right, and managed to hold on to the true message of Christ. And Jesus, as mentioned in the Quran, foretold of a prophet to come, whose name will be Ahmed. Okay, so they understood this,
right?
Verse 61, yeah. So they understood this. They knew there was going to be another prophet, and that would be his name. So the Christians did not disagree. So when it came to,
do you know the name of this Christian group? Like, can we historically know which?
We don't know like the sect name per se. We just refer to them as Christians, right? These are people like Waraka, like Salman al-Farsi. These are the type of Christians, because they didn't identify with these sects that we're familiar with. They slipped through the cracks and held on to the message.
Yeah, Brother Yemeni, I'm so sorry. There's a very interesting point to add here. You have to understand the way Arabia functions is Arabia was in a bubble. Arabia was in a bubble, and Arabia subsists with its own traditions within itself. And this is why when you walk into our paradigm, and you have to approach us from an internal critique.
Because it undoes what you know. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
Because
okay.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I was just going to say, so when I see terms like Gehenna, or when I see terms like Eden, um, or for example, this is not in the Surah, but I'm reminded of, say, the name of the mountain that Noah's Ark lands according to the Quran, which is either Kudi or Judy, whatever the
Judy.
pronunciation is.
Yeah, Judy.
These are very, very specific terms now. These are not just haphazard, I'll just throw in that term. These are very, like, intentional terms used in the Quran. Because my eye catches stuff like that. Hanif, Gehenna. You even have Sakina.
Sakina. No. Yeah.
What I think some translations call like tranquility, but really it's a rabbinic phrase meaning the glory
Shekinah.
or the Shekinah glory, right? See, okay, but these terms though never occur. Like for example, Judy never occur pre-Syriac. So it's the Syrian fathers that, like Ephraim the Syrian Christian, that believe that in Armenia, Kudi, Judy is the location for where the Ark lands. But before him, no one, not in Genesis, because Genesis has Urartu, Ararat.
Yeah.
Ancient Near Eastern texts like Atrahasis, Enuma Elish, they all have different mountain names. It was only when the Syrian Christians came up with Judy, Kudi, but then that occurs in the Quran. Like, why not Judy Kudi before the Syrian fathers, like say in the 1st century and into the BC period?
Again, we can't trace all of history, right? All that we know is that there were some people. And the thing is about Islam, remember, at the end of the day, when we talk about Islam, most of the time we talk about Islam coming with the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But Islam started with Adam, right? And from Adam all the way till now, it's always been the minority that believed in the truth, right? It's always been the minority that carried on the message. And it was always when the message of God was nearly erased from the face of the planet that he sent another prophet, to these people,
Sure.
to keep it right. And this is why, what do you call it, John, even yesterday, he mentioned in Sahih Muslim that during the time of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, during Medina, before he became a prophet, before Islam, with Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came, Allah looked at the earth with absolute hatred, except for the remnants of the people of the book. So it just highlights how few held on to the true tradition. And these are the traditions that we find dotted about in history, here and there. These people had this information, people had that information. But in terms of revelation, that was retained in Medina. It was safe in Medina, like SMK said, because it was cut off. Arabia was cut off. No one was really interested in Arabia. Yeah.
Exactly.
So they found
and Allah in his wisdom decides to then choose that
the location to reveal
that location,
a clean slate. He
like
picked
a clean
the clean
slate reset sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. And this is why a lot of people say that why did the last prophet come here, where everything was going on in Palestine? Why here? It's exactly that reason. It's the clean slate. And this is where when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about him being the ummi, it also means that he is cut off from those traditions.
Illiterate, cut off. These are thinking. But not only that, okay. Remember, the Bible reached everywhere except Arabia. Didn't reach Arabia, right? It reached Yemen, it reached Ethiopia. Different canons, of course. Yeah, but
just a quick question. What do you think of? There's a scholar by the name. His surname is Al Jalad. He does Sephardic inscription stuff where he argues that the Isa of the Quran comes from a more older Sephardic inscriptions that speak about also an Isa, but a deity called Isa. But then you have Christians coming into Arabia, and then that redemptive analogy approach happening where they're like, oh, you consider this deity called Isa to be the ransomer, well, we have the concept of the Son of Man as the ransomer. So there you go. Isa is Jesus.
But see, that doesn't work,
And
because
that's his
Islam,
argument. Like,
I get the argument based on how you've presented it. Because I said I've heard of him, I haven't looked at his stuff, but based on how you're describing it, no, this is not how it is. We don't believe in a redemptive analogy. We don't believe in that, which is why, for example, you would say that we do not want, like, for us who are a bit more aware of, the history of the Old Testament, and we don't refer to Yahweh. We don't say to, oh, Rob, we believe in who you refer to as Yahweh. We don't do that, because we do not recognize Yahweh at all.
But
Okay?
but just quickly, names.
Mm.
There is this concept of a theophoric element in names, right? Like Daniel, Ezekiel, Ezekiel, or with the L attributed to it.
L is
Michael, Gabriel. So Jesus, from the Aramaic Yeshua, where etymologically, how does that relate to Isa? Because you see, if you're talking about being in a void, so to speak, like clean slate. Excellent. I like that. I like that clarification, because now Allah, in fact, this is just a quick, again, side point. We also have that in the Bible. You have this is just a quick parallel example. Genesis 3, 6, and 11 speak of big rebellions, like big snapshot rebellions, that finally you have a clean slate reset when he calls Abraham, Genesis 12 onwards. In other words, all of humanity has been dispersed, the Tower of Babel story, clean slate with Abraham, which the Quran says he's the Hanif, which I find interesting in that sense. And then the redemptive story, the epic, according to what the Bible lays out, is that one day God wants to bring back all the disinherited nation groups that are under the other gods, the jinn, and so on. Bring them all back. But he has to do it somehow. How is he going to do that? And so then the story ends with Pentecost, where Jesus does what he does, death, resurrection, and then the gospel spreads out, and then all the Jews from around the nations come back to hear this message that Peter's preaching, and then on it goes. So, but coming back again to this void, that means Allah is even. Therefore, this is why the Quran's a miracle. If there's no engagement with Christians in an Arabic sense, Muhammad is genuinely a man who cannot be aware of anything.
He can't.
In writing.
Yeah, he's not.
Hence this Ummi term, separated, right?
Separated, illiterate.
Even more so, why the Quran has to be a miracle, if it gets things correct, because how could Muhammad know? Hence, this is from the unseen, right?
Yeah.
So, but then that still comes back to my constant question about then how interesting it is that etymologically Isa doesn't match Yeshua, or when it comes to the stories about the past, it only matches texts that are not the Bible.
Yeah,
I don't find one biblical reference in the Quran.
Well, exactly.
Anyway,
that's the whole point. So, and it just goes to show that the Quran's not referring to the Bible, right? As you said.
I know, I know. So, this is why the whole Islamic dilemma thing is. That's why I said it's different for me than
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So here's the thing. Again, when it comes to the history, okay, Isa alayhi salam, first and foremost, people like they want to explore the origin of the name, okay, but you have to bear in mind, if you actually look into the history, there was images of Jesus, there was images of Isa in Mecca, in the Kaaba.
Very good point. Yes.
Yeah, of him and his mother.
Point. Right.
So people already.
How is that possible if there's no Arabic Christian influence or something going on? Like, how is that possible then?
No, because the thing is, you got to remember as well that the Kaaba was original to Abraham. The Arabs understood this. That's why they had images of Abraham and Ishmael as well. So they already understood that this Kaaba was built by them. This was what they've learned from their forefathers, and they have heard these stories. Okay, like the figures, not the stories themselves, but they've heard of the figures, like Isa, like Maryam, like Ibrahim, like Ismail, and they've attributed things to them. Okay, this is why they knew Ishmael, for example, was an archer, but what they attributed to him was divination arrows. So they made him a mushrik, right? Because divination is kufr.
Basically, like in Orthodox
Yeah,
Christians, the icons, theosis, all that.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, so this is what they did. They've messed about with these individuals, right? So
Sure.
the true story of these people was not known to them. Okay. But Isa alayhi salam, this is why no one really questioned the name in Mecca and Medina. They were like, oh, Isa, oh yeah, we know who that is. We know who you're referring to. Even when Najran, when the Christians of Najran came from the south of Arabia, close to the border of Yemen, and they came to Medina to visit the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't ask him to clarify what Isa meant. They weren't like, who's this guy? They understood immediately who he was. So this is a modern thing that we are trying to go back and
Can you give me
understand how
just
we
quickly?
relate
Can
to
you give
the
me
Hebrew and the
dates? Like,
Aramaic.
can you give me dates like 500 CE to like? Can you give me like a range of dates for that this is just common knowledge in that region? Is that possible
Yeah,
to
so
do? Or
The Najran Christians have been there for centuries, right? We would say at least the fourth century, at least the fourth century they would have been there in the
okay,
south
so
of
it's
in the south of
300s onwards.
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
In Mecca, what do you call it? This was we have in terms of documentation, obviously not that far back, um, because we have the companions that are talking about it and everything. So we're talking about 100 years maximum. We at least we know that for a fact. For about 100 years, a generation, they understood who Isa was because of these paintings. We don't have much information about prior to the 5th century regarding Mecca, okay, and what was going on in Mecca, other than what our Rasul would tell us. Like, for example, when the Prophet said that Mecca used to be monotheist until Abdullah bin Luhay brought statues, idols from the Canaanites in northern Arabia to Mecca, and that's how idol worship began. That happened around the 5th century. Okay.
okay,
So what do you call it? Not sorry, not the 5th century. My bad. What do you call it? Around the 4th century.
okay,
Because
yeah,
5th century there was things happening, and then no, my bad. Because subhanallah, sorry. Because Islam came in the 7th century. Yeah. So we're
yeah.
talking about 6th century is referring to the Kaaba and stuff, and then 5th
Say
century would have
5.
been
You can say
Abdullah bin Ubay.
500s. Say
Yeah,
500s into the 600s. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how much we know, right? But
In
again,
fact,
these are bits.
570 is the birth of Muhammad, and
Yeah.
there was that the surah on the elephant, that
Yes.
whole
Yeah. The
like
year
he
of
was
the elephant.
born on that same
Yeah. Yeah. He was
encounter and
born
the
in the year of the
pushback and
elephant. Yeah. Yeah.
right, right.
So, and
So
yeah. Go on.
oh no, go for it.
No. I was going to make a side point, so it's not really important.
So then is there a specific year that Muhammad then starts when the cave encounter,
Yeah, that
and
was
then
in
he
610.
realizes 610. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then 23 years from 610 onwards is this Quran that starts to grow and become the 114 surahs that we have today. Right.
Yeah.
In those 23 years, is it a vacuum for those 23 years?
No. The Quran was not revealed in a vacuum.
No. What SMK
Well,
was
what do you
getting
mean
at,
by
like
vacuum
it's
then? Maybe I misunderstood. What do you mean by vacuum?
like maybe what was the term you used, SMK? Like in the context of the
Void?
reset, like a void. In
No,
other
so
words,
yeah, so essentially what SMK was saying was regarding the history, that the Quran was revealed in a place where which was isolated from the rest of the world.
yeah.
Rome and Persia and Abyssinia and Yemen all surrounded it, but it was nowhere near Medina, right? Clean slate is what SMK used.
And that migration journey, is that over a 23-year period?
Yeah, so the
Like,
you're saying from Mecca to Medina. Yeah. So the migration happened 13 years after. So it happened in 622. In 622 AD, the Prophet ﷺ migrated. 623 was the Battle of Badr, and they returned to Mecca. What do you call it? 10 years after that.
Sure. And it's during that period.
Or 9 years. 9 years.
You have they're still in that void relative to the rest of the world.
Yeah. They didn't come into contact. The Prophet ﷺ asked, not asked. He sent out the message of Islam to the other kings. He sent messages to Abyssinia, to Egypt, to Miraculous, to Khosrow. Right. So he sent these letters. This was the interaction with the rest of the world. But in terms of having their scriptures and traditions imported to him, that didn't happen.
Okay, so would you say then, simultaneous to Muhammad doing his thing over those 23 years, the world is like continuing on with their stuff? Like, in other words, the Bible canon that I have is doing its thing, say in Rome, in the meantime.
Yeah.
Whereas the Christians and the Jews, more localized and in proximity with Muhammad in this 23-year void, they have a different Torah and Injil?
Yes.
I see.
They had what was true. They had what was true.
Based on your tradition, that,
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're speaking about our
your
tradition.
tradition is saying this is what we think, right? Okay.
Yeah. What we know. Now, this is because it comes from authentic traditions, so we know that this information is true.
Rob, I'm just curious. Have you ever watched Star Wars?
Oh man, I'm always I'm a big movie buff. Like, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then perfect. You're gonna get this reference beautifully. Tatooine.
Sure. Which is like Dune.
Okay, no.
Star Wars is based on Dune.
Doing the books or doing the movie?
Both. I think the movie did justice to the book, not the old.
No. Okay, that's a different ball. That's a different ball game.
No. Yeah. No, they. Yeah, it's okay. I like both, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
My point is that when you consider Arabia, and when we're talking about Arabia, okay, and we're talking about Arabia in this bubble, think Tatooine. In the sense that you're not going to have any formalized kind of incursion there, but you're going to have renegades and rebels who are going to come, and they're going to be incognito there.
Okay, so Coruscant would be Rome.
Coruscant would be Rome. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
right.
That makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
So Coruscant then, but forgive me for this, because don't forget there is I'm a scientist in training, so I can't allow bias to creep in. But if you're using Star Wars as an analogy, here's two things I can do as a Christian. In fact, I've done this in my own Bible studies that I've led and so on. For example, Mark's gospel starts just like how a Star Wars title starts. So in the Greek, you know how like Star Wars goes duh, like a long time ago, and guys far, far away.
Yeah.
Literally, that's how Mark starts. This is the beginning of the good news. Why? Because you have this void between the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi, that ends on a bad note. And now what? What's God going to do now? And then you have the so-called 500 years of nothing, then the Maccabean stuff, blah, blah, blah. Boom, Jesus comes on the scene like a new hope. Luke is a type of Jesus-like figure for us Christians.
Oh, that analogy has not been. We have not like we. Anyone that knows Star Wars,
trust me with analogies. People who know me know I make these. However, okay, but that's me importing my what I do in my devotions, but coming more to you, Coruscant then has, say, the Jedi archives, the Jedi Temple, right? They are the crux of obviously they would be a religious group in that sense, but they actually, ironically, you have the Senate. they listened to the Jedi, and then the whole point of the Star Wars narrative, the way George Lucas beautifully sort of, including the prequels, where you have this one dude, Palpatine, that worms his way through, creeps his way through in order to have the Senate trump the Jedi and then corrupt everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole universe goes into chaos.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but Tatooine is like kind of like the Wild West, but on a far, like literally there's a phrase, Tatooine is on the most distant side of the galaxy.
It's on the outer
rim.
Just
the outer rim, exactly. Yeah. Now,
no, but
anything goes. The point here is anything goes with respect to Tatooine. In other words, that it's completely relative. There is no absolutes. There's no objective truths. Tatooine is just the Hutts. You know, Jabba the Hutt is there, for goodness sake. Like, he's this wormy, slimy, you know. So, if you're going to use the Quran in that analogy sense, then Rome, if Rome corresponds to Coruscant, then the Bible corresponds to the Jedi Temple. My Bible. Now,
yeah, that's why I would not use that analogy. I would not use that analogy. I see where SMK was trying to go, but it doesn't work. It doesn't. It actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because you know, if you're a proper Star Wars fan, that's a terrible thing.
As you can tell, I am.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't consider the sequels canon. No way.
Oh, no way.
No, the sequels aren't
just for me. The Timothy Zahn books, you know, the Zahn trilogy. It ends there. So yeah.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, this is the thing. At the end of the day, without freaking analogies, the Quran was revealed in a time where the last people who had the Torah and Injil were, and Allah revealed the Quran for them to recognize that which they have recognized in terms of prophecy, to recognize the truth, to help them with that. Okay, before everything was lost. Okay, so Allah did not allow anything to be totally lost. And the Quran came, and then the Jews and the Christians started to differ about his prophethood. The Jews started to reject him. Some accepted him. Some of the Christians accepted him. Some of them rejected him, and that caused its own, turmoil. And with regards to the people of the book, but those who were uppermost, fulfilling the prophecy, fulfilling the promise to Jesus, are those who remained upon the path of Jesus and survived the centuries.
So it's not to do with quantity; it's to do with even if they're a remnant, right?
It's about quality, because one thing that has repeated itself in history is that those who accepted the truth have always been the minority. Even with the Prophet, peace be upon him, when it first started, it was the minority that accepted. But but the nation of Muhammad ﷺ grew to the state it is because it was the final thing, right? And even when it comes to the corruption and the loss of not the corruption, but the loss of our religion, of Islam, when you look about eschatology, when the Quran is wiped from the memories, when the Quran is wiped from the pages and we've got nothing but blank pages, and the Kaaba is destroyed and there is no believer left upon the face of the earth, that's when Allah destroys it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no believers left.
So wait, do you believe that there's going to be a time when that happens?
Yeah. This is foretold. There's going to be a time where the Kaaba gets destroyed.
Would be wiped.
It will be absolutely taken. It will be demolished completely.
Not just the Kaaba. There will not be a single remembrance of the Quran. Not a word of the Quran will be left in this world.
Yeah, the death of what do you call it? The removal of knowledge is by the death of the scholars. When our scholars pass away, that's a little bit of knowledge being taken away from us at a time. This is all part of the end, right? So when it comes to the end of the world is actually contingent upon the believers. When there are no more believers, there's no more. Allah doesn't want the creation to exist, so He wraps it up. He destroys it and rolls it up into a scroll and holds it in His hand, and declares Himself, "I am the King. Where are the kings of the earth?" and so on and so forth.
So which would you prefer then? Would you prefer that Allah wrap it up and hence allow the destruction of the Kaaba?
No, this is going to happen. No, this is going to happen. There is no choice about this, right?
So,
but the point
just
here
quickly,
is,
what if there's just other religious groups left? Not so. In
oh
other words,
yeah,
all of Islam goes, and say Christians, Hindus
yeah,
are left. Then
it's gonna
Allah
be,
ends it.
then Allah ends it,
Okay,
because there won't be any believers in His message left.
sure.
And this
Believers,
goes all,
hence Muslims,
and this actually goes all the way back to the beginning, when Allah said to the angels, "I'm going to create a vice regent upon the earth." The whole point of the earth was created for the believers to inherit it.
which Adam was
When
that,
there are
right?
no, huh?
Adam was that vice regent. He
Adam
was
was
the
the first
first vice.
Adam
Yeah,
was the
right,
first vice regent, yeah.
right.
And the prophets that succeeded him. And then after the prophets have finished, then it became the righteous. So the
Just quickly, just
inheritance.
I'll let you continue, but just hold
Sure.
your thought.
Yeah.
Again, this reactionary. So you believe the end of the world is when there's 0 Muslims left, whereas Christians believe the end of the world is when there's 100% Christians.
Yeah.
You see that it's the opposite. It's like,
oh yeah, 100%.
We don't believe there's a reduction in the religion, rather an expansion of the religion and then the end.
No.
Whereas you are
We
saying
believe,
it's a reduction to nothing and then the end.
So we actually believe when Jesus comes back. Okay, let me first complete what I was saying.
Yeah. Finish your point.
Yeah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wanted the vice regents to inherit the earth. Right. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran talks about who inherits the earth, He talks about the believers. The believers inherit the earth. But when there are no more believers to inherit the earth, that's it. It's gone. But we actually believe that there will come a time where the entire earth would be Muslim. This is when Jesus returns.
The breaking of the cross.
The breaking of the cross.
And then He goes through His death motions and then resurrected. Right.
No, so He will die and He'll get buried next to the Prophet ﷺ. And at that time when He's in control of the earth, okay, and He destroys His enemies, okay, there won't be anyone but Muslims, right? But then after He dies, what happened with all the other prophets will happen again. The people will return to disbelief, and that will carry on until there are no more believers upon the earth. There will be and then that's when Allah destroys it. It will be so sudden.
Right.
Yeah.
No, finish. I want
and the thing is,
it's very interesting what you're saying. Yeah.
Because it will be so sudden that the Prophet ﷺ said that a person will lift a date to put it to his mouth and the horn will be blown. So that means no one will actually know it's even coming.
And like the Bible, twinkling of an eye, that sort of.
Yes.
Yeah. So this, again, we have the same thing in, say, Revelation 20 with the 1,000-year reign. Like you have a just like how you said all of earth becomes Muslim, in that second step of so to speak, in that what happens. So you have the wedding, Jesus and the church, sort of like this wedding in Revelation 19, then the 1,000 years, then another refining process where people start to fall, then the culmination, new heaven, new earth, and the new Jerusalem. So, but by the way, it's not that I believe that to be that way chronologically, because I have different. I'm a partial preterist, because there are what we call pre-mill Christians, pre-millennium, and all that.
Yeah.
But it's again, the concepts are interestingly, they mirror each other, but they're opposites. They
contrast. They're contrasts.
Yeah, they're literally, the colors are like inverted.
Yes.
From each other. Yeah.
But this is the thing. And like I said, at the end of the day, when it comes to this discussion, because we do have a couple more guests, and it's been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
The point here is the Quran. When you understand our paradigm, you realize that the Quran is actually affirming something completely different. That the Quran is holding on to the remnants of the truth that the people had in terms of these minor groups. That the people in the 7th century had everything that they needed to recognize Islam as the truth, to recognize the Prophet ﷺ as the true prophet. And the last point I want to say, if we bring it to this today, right, like I mentioned before, we already have the contents of the Torah and the Injil with us in the Quran. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His mercy, has also ensured that even though you do not have the original scriptures, and you've done tabdeel, and you've written a book and said it is from Allah, he still had the people put truth in it. So this is why,
which then is now the Bible.
Which is now the Bible. So
right.
The tabdeel, the scriptures that you have substituted, which is the Bible, even then you still have remnants of the truth, which is why we can still use the Quran as the muhaymin and as the Furqan over your Bible. Not because it's what the Quran is affirming, but because Allah in His mercy has allowed you to recognize the truth, even though you've substituted His works. And you're not guilty of this. It's those people who meddled with it in the first place.
So for example, in verse, because I still have the surah open, Surah 98.
Yes.
The very last verse. Gardens of Eden through which rivers flow. So I'm not thinking it theologically and so on. I'm just thinking the fact that it's aware that there's rivers through this thing called Eden, it's a garden, and therefore if it's coming from Allah, so Allah is aware of an actual place called Eden, it's a garden, and there's rivers. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because you're saying there's remnants of the truths within my own Bible. If I go to Genesis 2, it's quite exhaustive with the description of Eden. It mentions 4 rivers, each by name, and we know where we know where the Tigris, Euphrates are. The Pishon, Gihon happen to be dry now, but they match. They all come at the head of where the Persian Gulf ends.
Correct.
And so therefore we can sort of like localize in real geographical sense.
No.
That's Eden.
No.
Based on what the text is saying in Genesis 2.
Yeah, based on Genesis.
You can't. Yeah. But what I'm saying is you can't do that with the Quran. It's just saying rivers, Eden.
No, because the Quran is referring to paradise, which is in the heavens. It's a creation outside of the earth.
This is a translational issue as well. You're reading Eden, but the Quran doesn't say Eden.
Yeah, it's Jannah. Paradise.
Jannah.
Eden is not paradise.
In verse 8 there.
Yeah, in verse 8 it says Jannah.
Yeah. So what do you call
Jannah
it? Yeah.
So then why the translation Eden?
It's a mistranslation.
No,
okay.
So this is it's a translational issue. So it says Jazaa'uhum 'inda rabbihim jannatu. Jannatu means gardens. Just gardens, right?
Okay, so Yusuf Ali has gardens of eternity.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Jannatu adenin. Adenin means for eternal, right? Tajri min tahtiha al-anhar khalidina fiha abada. They reside within it forever. And radiyallahu anhum wa radu anhu. ذَلِكَ لَمَنْ خَشِيَ رَبَّهُ. And that is for those who are in awe of Allah, conscious of Allah, who are who dedicate themselves to Allah, right? So this is who it's promised to: those who follow the truth, those who follow the message of the prophets, and concluding and perfecting their belief by accepting the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and accepting the Quran. That completes their faith. It doesn't change their faith. It completes it. And so the people of the book today, like I said to you, you guys have the Bible, but Allah in His mercy has given you the signs within. He's affirmed. You can still see some of the truth within it, and the Quran is used as a criterion, all right, to establish it today. So you just need to see that and accept Islam, because that's where the truth is.
Subhanallah. And it's so beautiful because, and I think this is one of the most constructive things that any sincere person, after seeing the events of yesterday, and inshallah any conversations to come specifically along these lines, once they come to understand the paradigm, the true Islamic paradigm, and where, for the lack of a better word, things were getting crossed, maybe, or not getting crossed, or being misconstrued or misrepresented, things like that. It should bring into a clearer light what the Islamic paradigm actually is.
Yeah, and this is not to um, what's the word? This is not to cause a tension or a discouragement is
Fitna?
the word I was looking for. Now, this is not to discourage you guys. The wall is still there because I see what you're saying with respect to in isolation. In fact, let's stick with the Tatooine analogy. I'll try and do a dawa here as a Christian. In other words, Muhammad is that new hope. You see, for the Christian, that if Jesus is the new hope, well, the Gospels also clarify that he is in obscurity. He's in Bethlehem, and it's a small little town, and the Magi have to travel all that way, and you have even Isaiah prophesying that he's the root of Jesse. No one could take notice of him. Blah 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 blah. So we have that same concept of like the outer rim origins of this savior figure. But okay, so I get the whole void thing. It's kind of like Tatooine, and therefore it can't then make universal claims out of thin air, because if Jabba the Hutt tried to make a objective truth of some brilliant thing that's, say, in Coruscant, how could he? He's never been there. He's just this Hutt. So no one can assume or presume things about reality. Therefore, only God can do that. He has to directly give information because he's God. He's omniscient. He can't make an error. He's God.
Exactly.
So he's giving direct revelation to Muhammad. This is called now the Quran. Oh, and those who are the minority within the proximity of Muhammad, the Jews and the Christians, with their Torah and Injil, which is not the Torah and Injil that the Romans have, because they are out there, right? That Torah and Injil confirms this. So this guy Muhammad that's saying, "I'm receiving revelation. This has to be true because it like I'm unaware of what you guys have, but here you go. Here's what I think is happening. Say with Mary, say like Surah 3, Mary in the temple being fed by Allah. Like, say that's that story. Hey Muhammad, how did you know about that story? It's I received it from the unseen. And these Christians and Jews, well, specifically in that sense would be Christians, they're like, yeah, no, we believe the same thing. Mary was in the temple, fed by God, and then there were pens cast. Now, here's where the wall situation happens. It's interesting that we didn't have any manuscript evidence of the Apocrypha, Gnostic, Pseudepigrapha until like the 1700s, 1800s, and 1900s, like the Nag Hammadi Library, Dead Sea Scrolls, all that.
Yeah, it wasn't discovered until then.
Then it no longer becomes unseen per se, because then if I'm like, hey, Yemeni, Proto-Evangelion of James says that Surah 3 story. The Dual Canaan matches the Alexander Romance. Syrian fathers speak about Judy with Noah's Ark. Abraham in the fire. That's a whole based on Jerome's Latin Vulgate. Okay. So you have even the Catholics, because Jerome assumed that Or is not an Akkadian term. He just thought Or is the Hebrew for light fire, and a whole legend was brought out of that. Even in Turkey right now, you have a mosque and like a cave, like a traditional spot of where the cave is, and where the fire happened in Urfa, which is north of Haran, somewhere up there. So the wall then is me going, either all these Tatooine texts. So I'm obviously seeing the Bible here as like the Orthodox version, but so my knee-jerk reaction is that
so help me if you make a Tatooine dilemma, I'm gonna have major issues. I'm gonna have major issues.
I don't like the analogy. I don't like the analogy at all.
In my paradigm, the Apocryphal and the Gnostic and the pseudepigraphical texts are like a Tatooine stuff surrounding
that would still be within the Jedi Council, because the thing is, what is happening then? All these Apocrypha, all the contents of the Nag Hammadi Library, this is not void off the main group, right? These are
No,
people
no,
that have
no.
been snuffed out.
Can I clarify what I mean? Where I was going with
Yeah.
that. So what I'm saying is, now I have a genuine fork in the road, where everything I know about what you would see me as perceiving Orthodox Christianity, Nicene Creed, all that stuff, right, is Bible. Otherwise, everything else that is not Bible is those apocryphal, pseudegraphical, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And that's true history.
No.
They can't share a same historical recounting. There's
They,
a
well,
genuine fork in the road there.
I'll
There's
tell
a
you why
term.
it's not. I'll tell you where the fork in the road actually is, and this is why I said that the analogy doesn't work. And let's forget about the Star Wars analogy, because
Yeah, okay,
not
all right,
everyone
all
in the,
right.
not all 150 people are Star Wars fans, right? They're not going to get the analogy. So let's stick to things that we actually do know. All right.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. The Bible, the fork that you're speaking about, the Bible and the Apocrypha actually follow the same fork, because they come from all of these different groups. Okay. Because you can, like I said, there's truth in the Bible as well, right? But there's truth in the Apocrypha. So they actually follow the same thing. None of these are revelation. The other fork is the revelation, which is one thing, the Torah and the Injil that Allah is speaking about and affirming. Allah is affirming truth in these things, okay, without referring to them as revelation. But Allah speaks about this, which is revelation. So what Christians have done, they've come to this fork in the road, and they followed the Bible and the Apocrypha, right, throughout the centuries, okay. Whereas there was another group that took off to Medina,
And
that
they would
is,
be obviously a minority.
and
They
that's the
have to be.
minority. Yeah,
Right.
and that's the minority that adhered to the Torah and Injil. They were like this, and they were like, and then they forked, and there was a fork. The people that did tabdil, and the people that kept the Torah and the Injil, and then later on they did the tahrif in terms of reinterpretation and whatnot. So this is where the fork in the road is. So you have to now sort of work your way back, and then take the other fork, and follow those who adhere to the message. Okay. Now, this is why we said that Allah, in His mercy, He's shown you that these things exist in history, right? That this is not a phantom thing. Okay, this is not something that's just been plucked out. People knew of this before, which is why they tested him in Medina as well. We are not saying that this is just something that's come out of
But
thin
just
air.
quickly, but this testing though is not that Bible Apocrypha fork. This testing is they had to rely on the Torah and Injil that they had, which is not the Bible
or the Apocrypha.
Obviously.
Now, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
now, my immediate then reaction is, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys would be really excited if this happened, and that is, you know, the whole Birmingham manuscript thing with the Quran, which then sort of confirms that the Quran actually dates back basically to the time in Muhammad. So, what if tomorrow, news, we found a manuscript of that Torah and that Injil in that fork context? That would be excellent, because then we could compare. We could actually be like, what does the Torah have versus what does the Pentateuch? I'll use Pentateuch so that people don't get confused.
I know.
What does the Pentateuch have versus what this Torah has? And we can now. So that's my point. Why isn't that there so we can make that comparison?
Look, I mean, you could ask that about, 500 years ago. Why didn't we have the manuscripts of, why did we not discover the Nag Hammadi library 500 years ago so that we know that there are some truths? You could say that about anything, really. Okay?
I suppose you have a point there, in the sense the church fathers like Origen and Jerome, where they encounter what they considered heresies that are proto-Gnostics, really. Now that we have the Nag Hammadi, we're like, oh yeah, we can see now that they were quoting the Gospel of Thomas, and
So then we become aware. The point here is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't relied on the manuscripts to give you the signs that Islam is the truth. There's so much in the Quran that can give you evidence that it's the truth. The Quran in of itself, with the linguistic miracle, the contradictions, the errors, the things that are confirmed by your by your scriptures that do have where these similarities do exist. These are all signs. It's not really the manuscripts being
so it
the
always
clincher.
comes for you as a Muslim. It's not that it always has to come back to the Quran, but you are very, very, very satisfied, and your faith is not. You have nothing to worry about because the Quran is that
Powerful.
much confirmed.
Yes.
Because if it's from Allah, then nothing else
Then
matters.
that's it. Nothing
Yes.
else matters. Yeah. And like I said, this is why the Quran is the first and foremost. This is why it's the miracle of Allah that we have today. All the other miracles, they were done, and that's it. But today we have the surviving miracle, which is the Quran itself.
Sure.
And and when you study it and you understand it, it opens up a whole new chapter. It gives you an insight to things that you would have never thought of before. And this is why this is, what John did yesterday really opened up this whole thing. So Islam is the continuation. When we say it's the continuation of the messages, because that's exactly what it was. It's the continuation of the scriptures. But unfortunately, Christians have been, they understood the scriptures to be the Bible because that's what they're familiar with. They didn't know that there was a minority that slipped through the cracks and survived the persecution, the substitution of the texts and everything. But Allah knew, and He preserved that, and He preserved it even further with the Quran. And what He entrusted to the Jews and the Christians before to safeguard the scriptures, He took that upon Himself by safeguarding all of His scriptures in the form of the Quran. And today,
I see. And so then the Quran, hence the emphasis on the Quran. You have to memorize it, recite it, even copy if required. Like, in other words, the care to not allow another corruption like that occurred in the past with respect to the Torah and the Injil. Now, there's no room for error moving forward with the Quran.
Zero.
And
it's impossible.
And think back to how and keep in context that this is what is being called the Muhaymin in the Furqan. And look at how it's being guarded and preserved.
Because you as a community, you're preserving it as well.
Exactly.
Like there's a shared...
It's
a communal thing. Yeah.
It's not a communal thing. It's Allah Himself.
No?
Because
providence in play. Yes.
Yeah. No, because at the end of the day, it's impossible. If it was our own effort, we wouldn't be able to do it.
But quickly, Allah couldn't do that with the Torah and Injil. He doesn't need to, because you're saying Quran is all you need now.
He could have if he wanted to, right? But the Jews and the Christians, they wanted to safeguard the scriptures, and He said, "Fine, if you want to take charge of it, take charge of it. Just don't corrupt it." And He knew they would, but this is why He always had in place the Quran, and He knew, and He knows, not knew, He knows that if He left the charge of the Quran to the Muslims, we would corrupt it. So He didn't leave it to us. He took it upon Himself. So, and the reason why it's preserved today is not because of us. It's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ensured and used us to preserve the Quran. Through the memorization, through the transmission, through this careful, this really vivid and extraordinary strict criteria to preserve the Quran. Otherwise, we couldn't do it. You have 10 qira'at. At one point in history, it was 50 and even more. Okay? The 10 qira'at, it would have been impossible for us, especially with when you look at the history of the Quran.
You're talking about phonetic pronunciations and
everything.
Yeah.
Text, phonetics, meanings, you name it. Because when we talk about the preservation of the Quran, we don't limit it to the text. We don't limit it to the recitation. We're talking about the tafsir of it as well, the understanding of the Quran. Because if we haven't got a preserved understanding of the Quran, what use is the Quran? It's corruption, because this is the charge of corruption given to the people of the book, that they change the meanings. So this is part of the preservation, the text of the Quran, and how to understand it, even to contextualize it and all of that. This is all preserved. On top of that, the hadith literature as well, because that's revelation. That's also preserved. So, and this is the legitimacy of Islam, that Allah has promised the preservation of something, of the Quran in particular, and it has been preserved. And this is beyond a shadow of a doubt.
And so when I used to say to Muslim Lantern, the implication, if you have what the Quran itself has, is people reacting. These are nothing but old tales, legends, fables. So the charge of plagiarism is not required because it's Allah directly telling Muhammad, this is what happened in history. It just happens to parallel what is considered a pseudepigrapha. But it's not
Nothing
that
just happens.
Muhammad's borrowing or plagiarizing it. It's Allah just giving
Direct
information.
Yeah. And this is why the charge is there in the Quran and it's responded to in the Quran. And this is why, like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put all the different types of charges against the Prophet.
Just quickly, why didn't Allah clarify and tell them, actually, there's no plagiarism here. I'm just agreeing with you may have the same concept, but not in a full-fledged sense. It's just, there's an overlap, in other words, like a Venn diagram sort of overlap.
No, he does. Why, when they say that these are nothing but fables, he's telling us nothing but fables. What's the response of Allah? He says, neither you nor your people before you knew it. So how could you be copying these stories if neither you? How could these people accuse you of retelling stories and fables as if you know them? But then when I challenge them and I say to them, you didn't know this, they're like, oh yeah, we actually don't know them. This is the response.
What about in Surah 16, somewhere like Ayah 100? They accuse that this was translated from a foreign tongue or something.
Yeah,
like
because
some
there was a
human
man
being is teaching Muhammad.
Yeah. So this is it's a contradictory claim, right? So now this is a different accusation, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is highlighting that these people struggled with the Quran. They didn't know what to do with the Quran, so they accused the Prophet ﷺ of various things, all of them contradicting each other. First, it's telling stories. Well, can't be the story. He can't be telling us fables. We don't even know these fables ourselves. It was a false claim. They said, okay, he must have got it from this guy. And then Allah is saying, well, it's an Arabic Quran. How can it be an Arabic Quran from a non-Arab? Because this individual, he was a poor trader. He was, what do they call it? In Mecca. He wasn't very wealthy or anything.
But we don't know his name. We can't identify.
We don't know his name. No. Right. But he couldn't speak Arabic. All right. He couldn't speak Arabic. So Allah says, Jamil wa Arabiya. You know, it's a non-Arabic guy, but it's an Arabic Quran. What kind of accusation is this? You know, how could he be the one teaching him? And not only that, they followed him. They followed the Prophet, peace be upon him. And they said they followed him to see if he's getting it from someone. They were like, he has to get it from someone. He's illiterate. He can't do this. He's not a poet. They accused him of being a poet. The Quran says this is not a book of poetry. And they admitted to it. They were like, no, this is not poetry. How can we say he's a poet when he doesn't know poetry? And this book is not poetry in of itself. They had him followed, and the guys saw him. There was two guys.
I remember reading about. So he had some poets killed, I think, because they accused him of that his poetry. No. Comparing poetry qualities or something. And
the poets that were what do you call it, executed by Rasulullah, that was due to their blasphemy, utilizing their poetry. It was nothing to do with them trying to challenge the Quran. So these are the evidences for Islam. You look at the history of the Quran, you see how it came to be, what the reaction of Quraysh was, how they tried to accuse him, how they had to keep backtracking, and at the end of the day, what did they say? This is magic. They couldn't actually attribute anything natural. They couldn't attribute anything natural to it. They were like, it has to be magic. We're not going to say it's from Allah. And Mughira, Mughira himself, he boasted about his knowledge. He was like, I know the prose, I know the poetry, I even know the poetry of the jinn. I'm the best of you in this. And he said, this is not from this. He actually said at first, this is from Allah, right?
It's out of this world.
Yeah, he said it's not of this
it's
world.
Like language, like hyperbolic language, like it's out of this world. It's extraterrestrial.
But he acknowledged actually it's from Allah to begin with, right? And the people peer pressured him. They were like, do you really want to say that in public? Like, do you not recognize your status? You say this, the people are going to turn against you. You're going to follow Muhammad? You're going to say that you're going to verify him? And then he said, let me think about it. And then he said that this is the words of a man. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then reveals that he's going to deal with him. He's going to deal with Mughira. And he's going to put him in the 6th level of hell, Saqar. Okay? So that is the story. This is all told to us in the Quran. And when you look at the history behind it, the reasons of these revelations, you see this is not something that a man could have ever come up with.
Sure.
I mean, just from our conversation today, the Quran is giving you a history that has never been told before.
It's the same argument, Galatians 1, with when Paul says, no human taught me the gospel. I had this encounter, I had to rethink my theology for 3 years. Then I had to compare notes for 2 weeks with, Peter and James and so on.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, it seems like you've encountered Jesus because we didn't teach you about the information that we know. You see, we have the same sort of situation going on there in the New Testament. I think just for the sake of... like to respect your time, because I like this discussion, by the way, man. You and I should do like a part 2 or something. But I'm going to now intense in a friendly way with respect, because I like you. I'm going to now be a little bit rigid and say I understand that story now. But notice it's within your paradigm. I would say the same thing about my paradigm, or self-critique it in my paradigm. If there's a slip-up in history, I would have to say there's an error in the Bible. I asked Muslim Lantern this, what's the name of the pharaoh in Surah 10, the one that drowns? And he's about to say a type of Shahada, but not the actual authentic Shahada. And then you have Ibn Kathir recounting... Oh, okay. Because I've been told that wasn't a true Shahada or something. And
No. It wasn't accepted from him. He actually said it, but it wasn't accepted. As he was saying, Jibreel alayhi salam was stuffing his mouth.
Because I read Ibn Kathir's tafsir, where very like... It's sort of the story is a bit humorous, because he's swooping down on his horse, and he's like, there's mud in your mouth, and like he buckles the pharaoh's horse, and then... So... and in fact, even Gabriel, like according to Ibn Kathir, Gabriel, it's like as if he's conversing with Muhammad, saying, you should have seen me when I was doing this back then. And anyway, if we identify, like for me, this is an example of a genuine miracle then. Based on everything you just said, Abraham in the fire, everything. So for me, one of my favorite is this Pharaoh example. If there's evidence of Pharaoh drowning, as described in the Quran, especially when it says it's washed up as a sign for those who disbelieve, notice that language. Because even at the time, the Israelites were like, no, what, really? The Pharaoh drowned? We need evidence of his body. You see, when Egyptologists rely on, say, the Exodus to tease out geographical details of the migration, where the location is, where the Reed Sea, not the Red Sea, we have now, it's taken about 50 years, but we have now a general idea of where Pi-Hahiroth is, where Migdol is, where Ramses was, chasing them out, and the Sea of Reeds, and so therefore if he were to be drowned, where he would be washed up. Because once the Israelites enter into the Sinai wilderness, and then they descend down to where Sinai is, his body has to be far east, in fact, outside Egyptian territory, for them to even be aware. Oh, there it is. Now, there's no record anywhere of Pharaoh drowning. Literally anywhere. Not in the Bible, I don't even think even in the first couple of centuries of the Common Era, only in a brief, like, conjecture in a Talmudic Mishnah text, there's this concept of him drowning, but that's about it. Now,
you're saying it's
this
not in
falls
the Bible?
into... Sorry?
It's not in Exodus that he drowned?
No.
Are you sure of that?
It says that it's a type of language that he's just swatted like a fly, but it's using like a kind of like a theophoric element that you see in names, It's sort of like a collective umbrella, like an umbrella term to, like when it says Pharaoh and his army, it's a way of saying, or when it says the Egyptians, it's a way of saying that group. But Exodus 13 very carefully shows a chronology of the waves of his army coming out. He's the last to leave. And this has led, so if we identify Ramses the Great as the pharaoh, because in other words, 1200s, 19th dynasty period is the Exodus. This is why you have even the Prince of Egypt, that cartoon. You'll notice Ramses survives at the end. You'll even notice the more recent Ridley Scott movie with Christian Bale as Moses. Ramses survives. Like this is a consensus, because when we discovered his mummy, we know how he died. It was a tooth infection. He died when he was 90. We even can see how he was mummified. In fact, his heart accidentally was ripped out, and so they had to we actually see the gold threads where they try to thread back his heart, but in the wrong location. So all those details where we investigated the mummy shows that he didn't die of drowning, but rather he was hunched, died of old age, and the mummification process was a little bit unusual because of what they did to his body when they're mummifying it. But if it's not Ramses, which pharaoh drowned? That's, you see, this is an example of a miracle knowledge. Yeah.
So this is the thing. I mean, I know that many Muslims actually say it was Ramses II because his body is in the British Museum and he's on the display for the world. But this is superficial thinking. They saw something that seems like that's what the Quran is talking about, and they've taken it on, right? We don't know. We don't know it's Ramses II. Yeah? This is the thing. So when we talk about, like you're talking about your wall and how the Quran sort of essentially denies the history as we know it. In order for you to be able to historically falsify the Quran, you have to be able to rely on things that are established within history. But like Ali said to you, nothing's actually established within history. And when you like, you know, Abraham, we were speaking about Abraham. There's no history about Abraham other than what you have in the Bible. There's nothing else, right? An Apocrypha, some apocryphal writings. It's all religious texts. But how can we prove that these religious texts are faithful to the man himself? We can't, right? Because there is no tradition to trace it.
Well, I'm going to pretend now that the Bible is in that fork of the road thing we spoke about, that the Torah, the Muslim Torah, is Islamic Torah is the correct Torah, and the Genesis account is the corrupted.
Yes.
Here's where it gets interesting. Isn't it convenient? I don't know if convenient is the right word, but it seems a bit odd, let's just say, being a corrupted text, that it gets ancient Near Eastern loanwords correct. So in other words, in Genesis 14, when Abraham encounters the kings of Mesopotamia, and then he comes across this Melchizedek figure, the only way we can even etymologically understand those names, because none of them are Hebrew terms. Abraham wasn't speaking Hebrew. If he's in the Chaldean area, he's speaking a type of Akkadian or Ugaritic, hence Ur of the Chaldeans. So this whole loanword thing is part of scholarship. For example, gopher wood with Noah's Ark. We were conjecturing, what does gopher mean? What type of wood is it? It wasn't until 2010 an Assyriologist discovers a specific cuneiform tablet that has kupru, I think is the Akkadian term, that matches gopher, and you know what it now means? Reeds. So in other words, it's a coracle, and this matches the practice of the marsh Arabs, where they have reed structures that float on the riverbeds in the vicinity of the Persian Gulf area. So you see, so this to me is fascinating from an anthropological context, where wow, this scribe or whoever was corrupting the Torah was able to still have a type of omniscient knowledge to correctly correspond to the loan words and the terminologies that we do find that correspond to the cuneiform text that we've unearthed and we reverse engineer. So this applies to the Pharaoh situation as well. We can reverse engineer the fact that Exodus and even Genesis has Ramses and Avaris as the location for the Exodus. Immediately, scholars are like, well, this gives us a time frame at least. We know that Meneptah, when he raises his stela. Now, this is like, you can't doubt this in history. This is like a historical fact. We can date the stela to a very precise date, say 1203 BC, thereabouts, under Meneptah. Meneptah is the son of Ramses the Great. So now we have a terminal point back, so from 1203 thereabouts, back to say 1270 would be where the Exodus in that range happens. 1215 or 1213 is Ramses' death. So,
yeah.
Okay, so then before his death, so 1213 back. So
yeah, go on.
Like in other, so this is what biblical scholars do, but you can't do this with the Quran.
But the thing is here, look, like what I'm saying to you here. Okay. Sorry, I just got a message. It just made me giggle. Okay. So here's the thing. When it comes to the history, okay, it is natural for us to see that the Bible gets history right in many places, because you have to remember, these are things that have been written throughout time. So many of these people who are writing, they would be contemporaneous to these moments in history. So it's not something that actually appears omniscient. It would appear omniscient when it's void of that history, outside of that context. But these are people that are speaking about things that happen within their time, which is why it's easy for the for biblical scholars or biblical historians to trace it in terms of understanding.
When I mentioned omniscient, I'm saying I'm trying to side with you in saying that the Genesis account is corrupted. The irony here is throwing that corruption process, they're still getting history right by corrupting it.
Yes, that's not something
that's
unusual.
Weird, though.
It's not weird, because to corrupt it, because at the end of the day, what we are talking about the message from God. This is what they're corrupting. This is what they're substituting. So they substituted the guidance of God with history, with a history lesson, essentially. Because the Bible is essentially telling us about history.
And the irony there is correct history. So it's like we'll stick with correct history, but still subjugate God's guidance for the sake of correct history.
Because look, at the end of the day, if the purpose of the Jews, right, when they did this tabdil, when they substituted the scriptures, they did it so that they can convince the other Jews that this is something they should follow. So naturally, it would have to be something that they recognize. So the history, if it was all wrong, they would be like, well, dude, we live in this time period. Why are you telling us all this garbage? It wouldn't make sense. So to get history right is not actually, the thing about falsehood is that it's most powerful when it's mixed with truth, right? And this is the thing that we warn about in Islam. We refer to what is known as shubuhat. Shubuhat is things that cause doubt, and the things that cause the most doubt is when truth is mixed with falsehood, because it blurs the lines. And the Prophet ﷺ said to us, he said, I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid for you. Clear misguidance, clear disbelief, because it's clear. You know it. I'm scared. I'm scared for you regarding the things that are, blurred together. The shubuhat.
So, yeah. Just quickly though, isn't it interesting then this corrupted text? So when I do my homework or when we do comparison with the Exodus Genesis account of say Exodus, and the geography, blah blah blah, I then convert and become a theist, and I align myself in a belief in the account of Moses and so on, because it corresponds in a historically valid way. But it's through it's weird, because then in your paradigm, then looking at mine, I've become a believer in Moses, for example, through a corrupted text.
Yeah,
that's weird.
No, it's not weird. It's not weird because the Jews believed in Moses, so they can't negate him. It would completely go away from the task at hand. The task at hand was to give the Jews something different and claim it was from God. So in order for them to claim it was from God, they would have to retain the identity of Moses, the reputation of Moses. But they had to tweak things.
And that would require a heck of a lot of very close to omniscience to be so fine-tuned to it's true but not true, like to know what to leave out, what to leave in.
It's very easy. It's very easy to actually what do you call it, mix truth with falsehood. People do it all the time. It doesn't require any omniscient things. What do you call it? And
so okay, last statement. That means when Jerome in his Latin Vulgate has igni, Latin for fire, igni Chaldereum, fire of the Chaldeans, there was pushback much later on in critical biblical scholarship in the 1800s, because we didn't know about Ugaritic until the discovery of the cuneiform. The moment we discovered it, then aware, especially the Catholic scholars, aware of Jerome's Latin rendering of igni, immediately went, oops, Jerome did a foobar by mistranslating or, not realizing or is a loanword from Ugaritic and Akkadian. It's not a Hebrew word. So in other words, it's a phonetic fallacy there. So but what you're saying is, because the Quran has the story, the fire story, be cool, be a tranquility, that means Jerome got it correct. Even though it's a mistranslation, even though it's a phonetic mistranslation.
We don't mention that this happened in Ur, do we? We don't affirm this.
No, but the fact that in his is the only Bible that has fire, that means he was very lucky to still get it correct.
I believe it's in Jubilees as well, if I'm not mistaken.
No, so Jubilees is just the idols. And then you have Zoroastrian offshoots as well, and yeah.
Okay, well, listen. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're tired, like.
Oh no, me, I'm having. I'm not tired.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'm just. I want to respect.
Actually, I am tired and I have to leave. But I just thought. I
can keep going. It's only 10:30 in the morning for me, so I can still keep going. But it's up to you guys. So
it's 1:30 in the morning for me. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I have to leave as well. But Rob, I thought since you're very interested in history, I thought it might be interesting for you just to have a quick, to highlight quickly some inaccuracies he probably, committed. So I don't know. But anyway, so there is no historical mention anywhere in Egypt. You could refer to the many writings of what's his name, the Egyptian. He's currently the head of the Egyptian antiquities, the official institute in Egypt. Mustafa Hawass, that's his name. Yeah. I've been more than 3 times to the Egyptian Museum. I took many photos, some of which are illegal. I might be held accountable for it. But I actually have on my telephone right here a photograph from the Egyptian Museum of Ramses II, his mummy. There is no mention of any Israelites during his time. There is no mention that he was that he died of what you just referred to, inaccurately, actually. But I know what you did it because there was actually some Some allude to that Ramses II died because of an infective endocarditis due to tooth extraction. That's actually incorrect. He died of rheumatic arthritis. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was another. Yeah.
No, that's Ramses II.
Hence, I mentioned the Hunchback.
That's not contested currently. Yeah, that is uncontested fact, historical fact. Ramses II, and I'm not Egyptian, by the way, so I have no skin in the game or no dog in the game in the fight. Yeah. So
are you familiar with Bob Ryer?
I don't need to be, but I know this for a fact because I have read some of the works of Mustafa Hawass, as well as his current apprentice. He has currently two PhD students, actually three, to be more accurate. One of whom is English.
The reason why I say that is because Breyer it's Brier is his surname. He goes by Bob Ryer, but I wouldn't be surprised if he knows this guy. I'm not familiar with this guy, but he's the mummification specialist with respect to that institute that you just described. So, and he runs what's called the Great Course. He does lectures and courses for what's called the Great Courses, and he's literally called the mummy guy. That's his specialization. So how I found out about information about like the rearrangement of the heart and so on, Bob Ryer did work on Ramses' mummy. So yeah.
No, I'm aware that there was some historical reference to this during the 80s. That was the narrative up until the 90s, the early 90s, that he actually died of infective endocarditis. So I'm aware of that. The mummy of Ramses II was actually kept in the British Museum until the 70s. It was recovered by Egypt, or flown to Egypt, and then it was taken, and that's in the early 70s, and it was taken to France in the mid 70s, just to do like a further examination. So yeah, what you said is historically correct in that sense. I'm not contesting that, but the current consensus amongst all Egyptologists that Ramses II actually died of complications of infective endocarditis. Not infective endocarditis, of rheumatoid arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
That has been already drawn on this.
Yep.
So I don't want to take long in this, because for us as Muslims, Rob, history doesn't really count.
Because there are so many gaps.
Unless there is irrefutable evidence for it, for something that probably goes against the Quran, against the
well, when I see
the authority
but what I'm saying is, when I see the Quran giving data, then when I see Muslims say on YouTube, scientific miracles,
that I'm actually having a hypoglycemia.
Sorry,
I'm having hypoglycemia, low blood sugar.
Oh, then go. Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead with your point. I'll try to address it while eating some.
Well, have a banana quickly.
I did actually. Many of them.
Yeah.
So go on.
It's okay.
Oh, actually, an apple as well. Apple can be quick, sugar intake. Healthy as well. Okay, so but when I see online, like for example, the big one would be the Quran got the king versus pharaoh terminology correct. At one point in time, before the 18th dynasty, you don't really have per R, pharaoh as a term.
Yeah.
Notice Yemeni, when I mentioned that the Bible is a human work first, but providentially brought about. I'm fine with that anachronism in Genesis, because in Genesis 47 you have Ramses mentioned with respect to Joseph, but in a parentheses sense, like it's literally brackets. This is in the location of where Ramses. And again, all the scholars are like, yeah, but that makes sense because Moses is compiling the Genesis story.
That is another historical inaccuracy in the Bible, Rob.
No.
Just let me tell you the facts as I know it, yeah, as I know them, yeah. And that is again, that is not something, you know, that is contested amongst Egyptologists. The 18th dynasty started because there was a rebellion against the Hyksos.
The Hyksos, yeah.
Yeah. So the Hyksos lasted for about 400 years, or 200 years ish, more or less. Now, before the 18th dynasty, the 17th, the 15th, and I think even the 14th. The 17th actually started when the rebellion started, the 17th dynasty, and that's when the Hyksos, you know, they were gone.
I think, look, we can talk about.
There is no Ramses, nor the first, nor the second, nor the third. None of them were within that period. They came later, from the 18th dynasty on.
The thing is here.
That's the problem. But again, this is not. I don't think this is the correct arena actually to discuss it, because this is all history, and I don't think that.
No. I think
I'll drop because I have too many issues, and I have
problem.
So,
no. Samad, don't go just yet. I want to clarify to Samad where I was going with the anachronism, to then come back to Yemeni, because I think Yemeni wants to say something. I brought that up, saying I'm okay with an anachronism because Moses is, like, for example, Genesis 14 has Dan, the term Dan used with respect to where Abraham chased those kings. But we know that there was no Dan when he actually was doing that. Rather, it was called Laish. Later in the book of Judges, we have a verse that says, oh, we call it Dan now, but it used to be Laish. And that basically, that's an example where place names change with respect to the current audience that the text is communicating to. So when you have Genesis 47 use the term Ramses, there was no Ramses at the time of Joseph. But if Moses is writing Genesis, and if Ramses the Great is the Pharaoh of the Exodus, the Israelites know who he's talking about.
The name Ramses was used actually in the Bible during the time of, you know, the story of or close to the story of Moses. Again,
so we are able to then date it. We're giving a date range.
I know it might be interesting to you as a Christian, yeah, and it might be interesting to some Muslims when they are, you know, having something, you know, like a discussion with the Christians, to somehow, you know, like highlight some inaccuracies within the Bible. To me, it's not important. I'm a history buff, yeah. I have visited many museums. I spent a fortune on this, and my time. And it even affected my profession as a doctor, because, you know.
So to cut to the chase, who would the Pharaoh be?
Again, just to tell you, I'm interested in history for history itself. I'm not interested in it from a religious point of view. But just to tell you, these inaccuracies are not interesting for me. I'm a very observant Muslim, alhamdulillah. Yeah, and Brother Yemeni knows about it. I'm not the best Muslim in everything, I'll tell you that, yeah. But just to tell you, to me, it's not important when I'm having like a discussion with a religious discussion with the Christian, even when they, you know, like they mention these inaccuracies in the Bible, and they think they are really happy when they mention them, but they are historically incorrect, my brother.
The thing is here.
Don't take me as a reference, because I'm not. I could back up to very good references I could refer to again, but
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So the thing is, you know, we can talk about, you know, because even Brother Sam, he was sort of having a go at me for not pointing you out on historical inaccuracies. But you know, the point here is not so much.
Well, I'm an open book. I'm not.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not about, you know, nitpicking these little examples here and there. That's not what I'm concerned with. At the end of the day, we're here to teach the purpose of this stream tonight is to not debate anything. It's to establish our position so that the Christians can understand and the Muslims can understand as well, okay, of our position. So we spoke about how the dilemma doesn't hold any weight because it's given a complete alternative view of history and everything. And then we got to the point, I was like, okay, what do we do with the Bible? Why do we find these similarities? Why does it correspond to history? So that's the main point, okay? While we can talk about inaccuracies here and there, well, we are talking about the things that it got right. Why would it get things right if it's a substitute book designed to trick the people? And like I said to you, Rob, the purpose or the best way to fool people is by mixing truth with falsehood. That's the best way to deceive people, right? And this is what the Bible is. It's a deceptive tool which utilizes correct information by mixing false information and making people believe that it's from God. And that's why the people have taken it as scripture. Oh, we've lost him. We've just lost him. So I have no idea what happened there. Like my hand was here, by the way. So I did not drop him. He reached for something, and then subhanallah, he sort of just dropped. But that's the main point.
Might have had some some button or press something.
Yeah, maybe. So to be fair, what do you call it? If he comes back, we'll close the conversation anyway, because he's had significantly long time.
Kind of goes to that point that Bart. Kind of goes to that point that Bart.
You went robotic.
Oh, that's weird.
Why? Right, the last thing I heard was why would, and I forget now what. I was hearing what you maybe to start again. Sorry.
All right. So I'm just going to make this point very quickly, and then what do you call it? We'll close the conversation, because you've had a significant amount of time. I think you acknowledge that, and I haven't given the chance for the Muslims.
Sorry to the others.
And I'm leaving anyway because I need to go.
And Yemeni.
Yemeni,
if there's a way in private, we can exchange contact.
Really nice speaking to you, Rob. I wasn't trying to contest you on anything, but I hope to see you again to discuss history, by the way, because I'm really I love history, like it's one of my main interests.
Yeah. I will bring, in fact, I'll bring you and Yemeni on, like on my stream, like just to, and you can stream it on yours if you want, like,
They have, what's the name of your channel?
Sentinel, like it's underneath my name, Sentinel Apologetics.
It's on his thing.
All right, I'll look it up.
Bye. Bye, Yallah. Assalamu alaikum. So here's the thing, because I want to give the Muslims time to come up, because for them they will also want to have some clarifications.
Go for it. And you need coffee.
So for me, like I said, for me personally, my style. I deal with the fundamentals of things. Okay. Because
I hope you see I do the same, right?
I think to a point. I think to a point. All right. But for me, like I said, when it comes to what I was saying is that when we talk about the parallels between the Bible and everything, we're talking about why would people put in real history into a book that's designed to deceive the people? Because the best way to do that is to mix truth and falsehood. It's that simple. It's the best way. If I want to convince you of something that, and make you feel, make you believe in something that is false, I'm not going to tell you the false thing, am I? I'm not going to tell you something that is going to be false. I'm going to mix it with truth. So then you'll be like, oh, yeah, you know what he's saying is true. But I'm not too sure about this. And it creeps that doubt into you. And then if I work on it, I can convince you that the lie is the truth.
Which ends up with the Nicene Creed as the ramification. Which ends up with
the Nicene Creed, yes.
Right.
And the Bible and everything. That's literally what it is. So it's not strange for people throughout history writing things and claiming that it's from God, including correct information and mixing false information, which is why we see what we see when we examine the text of the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we see that there are things that don't quite line up, but there are many things that are fine, historically speaking, with regards to how far we can take it historically. But at the end of the day, when it comes to comparing that with the Quran, we still can't use that as the basis to judge the Quran in terms of its historicity, because all of that is still conjecture. There's no verification outside of it. There's much. You talked about the Tower of Babel. There's no external verification for the Tower of Babel to confirm that story.
Ziggurat structures that are dug up. There's good.
I know about the structures.
I'll let you finish. That's a whole.
Yeah, I know about the structures that you're talking about. But we are talking about a specific structure, not many. One. The Tower of Babel is a single tower that was designed, according to the story, for the people to reach God. And that was the origin of the confusion of languages.
No, it's
There's
confirmed.
nothing.
The land of Shinar, as Genesis 11 speaks about.
Oh,
The
land
table of
of
nations
what?
in Genesis 10. So it starts. It
Yeah, I
literally
know the
gives
table
the
of nations.
location where it is. Shinar. Genesis 10 is a table of nations that lead to that, and then Abraham's migration from
that's
where Shinar
but
is into
none of these.
Haran, and then
Look,
yeah,
that's, you're talking about the geography. I'm talking about the tower itself. There's nothing.
yeah. No, there's a tower.
confirmed.
We found the tower. It's a ziggurat structure. It's a
No,
three.
what is the purpose? Okay,
It's not the Babylonian ziggurat structure. It's a more
right.
ancient.
I know,
Yeah.
I know that, but even that, if you actually look into the history of that, it doesn't match the purpose of the Tower of Babel. That's not its purpose. Well, the purpose of the Tower of Babel was to reach God. The ziggurats that you're
Yeah, the
referring
term
to,
Babel means gate of the gods. Yeah.
right? So this is why it doesn't work. But like I said, we can go into these things, okay? But ultimately, these are assumptions. Right, in the same way that Muslims, when they look at Ramses II, they're like, "Oh, that must be the pharaoh because he's preserved in a museum." Christians do the same thing archaeologically. They'll be like, "Oh, this seems similar to what we have in the Bible. It must be that." These are all assumptions, right? And this is an issue that both Christians and Muslims suffer from. So there's nothing historically that will actually put into place all of these things. But the Quran, it speaks about all of that history in the 7th century, whereas you have all of these authors speaking about it in their time. So what is more miraculous is not the fact that, the Bible writers are getting things right. That's normal, because we are expecting contemporaneous writers, okay? But the Quran, in a vacuum, void of all of the civilizations in the world, giving us these stories and correcting them and mentioning things that won't be dug up for centuries. This is something else.
Sure. And if that's true, it is something else. Yes.
Yeah. So this is why I look, at the end of the day, we're here to call to Islam, and these are the evidences for Islam. Explore this a little further, because I'm not expecting you to get it all right away, but explore it
no,
further.
I've tracked with you very well. I think
I know, but in terms of like,
these are one of
really
those rare discussions I've enjoyed. I'll leave it with this invitation to continue. You can bring on Samad, where I want to get. If you want to have that discussion, we can get down into the historical stuff. But everything you laid out in your at the start of your conclusion here, I could say as a Christian the same, that the Quran is that mix. So in other words, if I have the Bible as the Al Furqan, and now this thing called the Quran comes later, and then starts saying things about what was happening with Adam and Iblis, Abraham with the fire, Jesus, clay birds, drowning Pharaoh, then I can't help but go, it's so subtle. It deliberately goes out of its way to find, like, Allah has no children. Jesus is just a messenger. He's not the second person of the Trinity. Don't say three. Surah 112. He neither begets nor is begotten. It sounds very suspiciously like it's responding to the Nicene Creed there. Begotten, not made. It's interesting then, from a Christian paradigm, I could say the exact same words you just said about the Quran, whereas you were saying that with respect to what was happening to the original Torah and Injil, that then became this corrupted thing called the Bible, and then the Quran comes on the scene to bring it back to the original Torah and Injil, and away from the Bible. That's my summary of the discussion we've had.
Sure,
or
but there's
what I've
one thing you're missing
from the discussion we've just had.
Yeah, but there's one thing you're missing that we have. Why is our book the criteria? Why do we refer to it as the criteria?
Oh, big robotic.
Yeah.
It's on your end, Rob. You have some Wi-Fi or net issues.
Oh, yeah, it is fine. It is on his end, yeah. He's sort of blipped out. So I don't know if you can still hear me.
I don't think so.
No. So the one
He'll
thing,
come back on.
Yeah.
Wait, he'll come back on because you should give it to him as reply because I know where you're going. It's a very important point. SubhanAllah.
yeah,
Say,
he's
give him
dropped out.
2 seconds. See if he comes back. Inshallah.
Yeah, because this is the most fundamental thing that he's missing.
Mm-hmm. And you know, when you were talking about history, and especially when he was going on about the history, it reminds me of this interview with Bart Ehrman, where Bart Ehrman is debating an evangelist, and he says, "Listen, I don't care if he gets the flora and the fauna right. I don't care if he gets the food right. I don't care if he gets the clothing right. That has no bearing on what happened."
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if he's going to be back because I want to get to the Muslims, inshallah, because the Muslims have been waiting. So the one thing that he was missing is that it's from God. The Quran is the criterion because it's from Allah. And he himself has already admitted that he believes that the Bible was written by men. So you can't have a book written by men be the criterion over that which was authored by God. You can't. It's impossible. So that's what he missed. There he is. No, he's still having issues.
Yeah, he's having
Yemeni. I'm having internet issues. Do I have
Yeah.
permission to re-upload this on my channel?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
this
that's
segment.
Fine. It's no problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just thought I'll ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'll just leave it at that. Like, I don't know whatever you heard. So, yeah.
Just play it back the last couple of seconds. I just clarifying.
I'll give you my email now in the private chat so you can.
Yeah. No, because I keep forgetting. Just email me, and what do you call it? And I'll know it's you.
Okay. Give me your email.
It's in the description. It's in the description of the video.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. My email's in the description of all of my videos and lives and everything for people to contact me. Because like I've had it several times where people leave me their email in the private chat, and then I finish the stream, and because I'm tired, I just close the whole stream down. I just exit, and I forget to note down their emails. So drop me an email, and we'll arrange something. It's not a problem. All right.
Sure.
All right.
All right, man. Thank you.
Take it easy.
Take care.
No worries. All right. You too. Bye bye. All right.